Segundo. We will get started here momentarily. We're going to have the invocation led by City Clerk Tracy Weaver, and Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Council Member Nickel. And then we have a couple special presentations after that, so if we could all please rise. Before we do that, I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, would you please take roll call? See Lance on video.
Absolutely. Council Member Giroux?
Here.
Council Member Nickel?
Here.
Council Member Perstek?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel?
Here.
Mayor Boyles?
Here. Okay, all please rise.
We gather to make decisions for our community. May we use only our best skills and judgment, keeping ourselves impartial and neutral as we consider the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us, and always act in accordance with what is best for our community and our fellow citizens.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Scott. All right, we've got a couple special presentations, as I mentioned. The first one is to celebrate Pride Month, and I'll be reading this proclamation. Then we've got one also recognizing Juneteenth with a proclamation. This one reads, whereas the City of El Segundo cherishes the value and dignity of each person and recognizes and appreciates the importance of and respect equality and freedom, and whereas all are welcome to the City of El Segundo to live, to work, and play, and every individual and family deserves a place to call home where they are safe, happy, and supported by friends, neighbors, and community leaders. And whereas the City of El Segundo denounces prejudice and unfair discrimination based on age, gender identity, gender expression, race, color, religion, marital status, national origin, sexual orientation, or physical attributes as an affront to our fundamental principles. And whereas the LGBTQ+ community has worked tirelessly for respect and equality and continues to celebrate authenticity, acceptance, and love. And whereas Pride Month began in June of 1969 on the one-year anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising in New York City, after LGBTQ+ and allied friends rose up and fought against harassment and discriminatory laws that have since been declared unconstitutional. And whereas the City of El Segundo celebrates and appreciates the cultural, civic, and economic contributions of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer plus community, which strengthens our social welfare. And whereas it is imperative that people in our community, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, feel valued, safe, empowered, and supported by their peers and community leaders. Now, therefore, on this 7th day of June, 2022, the mayor and members of the City Council of the City of El Segundo, California, hereby proclaim June 2022 as LGBTQ+ Pride Month in El Segundo, and encourage all residents to celebrate the progress towards justice, equality, and liberty in the LGBTQ+ community, and join us in the fights that remain to be won. The City Council of the City of El Segundo further calls upon residents and employees of El Segundo to observe June 2022 as LGBTQ+ Pride Month in honor of our LGBTQ+ residents, employees, visitors, and to the contributions they continue to make our community. And thank you for that. I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem. And then after Mayor Pro Tem speaks, we have a member of our DEI committee that's going to join us to accept these.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Proclamation from the City of El Segundo. Whereas this nation was founded on the principles stated in the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but in which people who were African American were held in slavery for many years. Whereas President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, which holds that all persons held as slaves within a state or designated part of a state shall be thenceforth and forever free, changing the legal status of more than 3.5 million enslaved African Americans from slave to free. Whereas the Emancipation Proclamation paved the way for the 13th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, which formally abolished slavery in the United States of America. And whereas news of the Emancipation Proclamation did not reach the most distant slave states until 2.5 years later, being finally read in Galveston, Texas, on June 19th, 1865. And whereas the Day of Respect and Remembrance, called Juneteenth, a combination of the words June and 19th, is observed as an important day in our nation's history. And whereas Juneteenth commemorates African American freedom while serving as a stark reminder of the inequities faced by African Americans throughout our nation's history. And whereas El Segundo recognizes that a diverse community founded on shared values and community spirit is our strength and our opportunity for the future. Now, therefore, the mayor and members of the City Council of the City of El Segundo hereby proclaim June 19th, 2022 as Juneteenth Celebration Day and urge all citizens to celebrate our diversity, to recognize the strength of a rich culture and the experience of African American heritage. This celebration acknowledges the history of an important part of American society and helps to unify our city and our nation as a whole. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And Ms. Jackson, if you would please, we'll have you, if you'd like to say a few words, and then we'll like to do a photo with you, if that's okay.
Written something for each proclamation, if that's okay. I'll start with Pride Month. On behalf of the residents, employees, and visitors of El Segundo, I'd like to thank you for this show of support for the LGBT. Is that better? Great. On behalf of the residents, employees, and visitors of El Segundo, I'd like to thank you for the show of support for the LGBTQ plus community. In a place where not everyone is accepting, it is important for the city to show support and set the tone for the type of community that El Segundo is working hard to be. We look forward to the city of El Segundo continuing this commitment and finding new ways to show the LGBTQ plus members of the community that we see you, we hear you, we value you, and this month and every month, we are very proud of the continued contributions you make to our community. We look forward to seeing the water tower light up again tonight, and we ask that the city works to find ways to not only acknowledge, but to celebrate the LGBTQ plus community. It's my little one. There are so many residents of all ages that would jump in to help organize and support any city-sponsored Pride events. There are LGBTQ plus clubs at both the middle school and high school that I know would love to collaborate. But even a small sign like flying a Pride flag at City Hall would go a long way in showing the city's support. Again, we appreciate this renewed commitment, and we look forward to working towards making El Segundo more welcoming and inclusive for all. Thank you. And Juneteenth. And for this, I would like to thank you for this proclamation and for acknowledging an important day in American history. As I reflect on the importance of this day, I'm reminded of a personal story that I would like to share. In my mid-20s, I went to a family reunion on my father's side. We have a very large family. I have 24 first cousins alone. We have a reunion every other year, but this one was special. We were meeting in North Carolina at the gravesite of the very first member of my family to be brought to the States as a slave. I don't know her African name, but the name she was given was Cherry Hill. She was taken from her family, made the voyage over in the bottom of a ship, and was sold into slavery at 4 years old. Visiting her grave was one of the most impactful moments of my life. There were a couple hundred of my extended relatives, and it was as though all of Cherry's children had come home. Sorry, I always get choked up. We came home to tell her we made it. We are educators and architects and pilots, and we have served our country in every branch of the armed forces. We are here, we are where we are now because she never gave up. Cherry died a free woman, but in her life, she laid the foundation that grew the army of family that had come back to honor her. The only moment more impactful than visiting her grave was attending the banquet that night and listening to the guest speaker. The guest speaker was Cherry's grandson. Yes, 15 years ago, I met the grandson of a slave. The terrible parts of our history are not as removed from us as we think. At a time when other people's grandparents are trying to decide how they were going to divide their estates amongst their children and grandchildren and passing down generational wealth, his grandmother was a part of that estate. She was not only unable to have any worldly possessions, but was considered a property, an asset to be passed down. The effects of slavery and systemic racism in this country are real, they are significant, and they are long-lasting, and it is impossible to understand why this country is the way it is today without acknowledging the entirety of our past, and we appreciate the step in the right direction towards making that happen. Thank you.
Ms. Jack, can we do a photo with you? Thank you for your personal and heartfelt comments. Can we do a photo with you right here, please? Thank you. Oh, yeah, I did. I'll just to state again, though, Ms. Jackson is the newest member of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Thank you so much for your service.
All right. Two proclamations. Okay, very good. A few photos, guys. Here we go. 1, 2. Make sure that was a nice one. It was. Here we go. A couple more. And one more. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you again. Now is the time and place for public communications. Clerk, do we have any people wishing to speak?
We do. First up is Nick. No Nick? All right, we'll come back to Nick in case he shows. Jack Baker.
Hello. Hi. My name is Jack Baker. I'm here tonight to talk about the pending cannabis issues coming before our city. The first thing I'd like to do is speak to the people, the outside group that got this ballot measure going. Please pull your ballot measure. The people of El Segundo have spoken. I think cannabis is coming to town. We're going to vote on it, having 2 ballot measures, 2 same questions. Please pull your ballot measure. If your goal was to get legal cannabis in town, you have succeeded. So let the city council and the city and the residents do their own job. Second thing, sorry, I just drank. Although you guys have made progress with this, I just was looking at your ordinance again, and there seems to be some things that are concerning. One is that you're basically only allowing retail only. You've stated that there are going to be no cultivation, growing, anything like that. I believe the square footage is somewhere around 1,700, 1,800 or something like that, I think you've decided on. You've also said there are unlimited licenses, and you've also not added any distance requirements between the 2 shops. So there could end up being 5 cannabis shops next to each other, depending on where they are. The way to gain control of this whole issue from the beginning was the zoning, and you all seem to be making progress on that. This seems to kind of go against that a little bit, because with the unlimited number and the lack of distance between the shops, again, we could end up with the complete opposite of what we wanted, which was a little control of this issue. That could mean opening up other zones in town, wherever those zones may be, based on, obviously you don't want to limit things, which lead to lawsuits, but you could open up other zones here in town that would allow for other businesses, which would allow for easier access for residents as opposed to just east of PCH. So I think if people do vote for this, people in town are saying they want it, it shouldn't just be tucked away on the other side of town with 5 other businesses next to it. The last issue is not necessary if the other group does pull their measure, but again, putting 2 questions on the ballot as well as a 3rd separate tax measure. I believe we've kind of gone back and forth, or you all have gone back and forth of whether you could or couldn't add the tax component directly to your ballot question. I believe it was decided you could. I don't know what the effort is to do something like that, but it at least gives if the other group does not pull their ballot, it gives people the distinction of one that doesn't have a tax versus one, the El Segundo option, that does have a tax. That makes it a lot easier for the residents to decide which one they're supposed to be voting on. So, if anything, just to help your own ballot measure, if the other group does not pull their initiative, please add the tax component to it so the residents know which one they're supposed to be voting on. But please take a look at this zoning. Allowing just retail only means you'll basically have 7-Elevens opening up that just sell marijuana. And obviously opening up next to another one's not good business. So one will close, another will open, one will close, another will open. You can look up and down California at places that had these unlimited, no distance requirements, and you'll see it did not work out. It's not the way you want to go with this. So if you are going to take control of it, which you have been heading in that direction, I would encourage you to take a look at the zoning again, add those distance requirements, maybe open up other zones so that there's more options to make it a viable option for the city, make more money on it, make taxes, make it something where people actually want to come in, open up these businesses, commit to a long-term thing as opposed to just a 1,700 square foot storefront. So, thank you. Good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Baker.
John Pickhaver?
Good evening, council and city staff. My name is John Pickhaver. I am a resident of El Segundo and a member of the Sweat Equity Alliance. I wanted to thank you for declaring June Pride Month in El Segundo for the second year in a row. I had the honor of accepting the proclamation along with my friend Gabrielle Deshobi last year and was very proud to see my friend, DEI committee member and ally Genesis Jackson accept it this year. I wanted to echo her words a bit about the importance of finding new ways to show the LGBTQ plus members of this community that you support us along with other underrepresented groups in town. Earlier today, I ran to Manhattan Beach, and across the street from the pier, they had a rainbow walkway. I've been running by there a few times a week for the last 9 years or so, and I don't ever recall seeing that rainbow walkway during previous Pride months. And a part of me thinks that a lot of this had to do with the fact that their neighboring city, El Segundo, shined a spotlight of support for Pride 100 feet into the sky last year when you illuminated the water tower in rainbow lights. I bring this up because I believe when we do good, more good happens. Last year, the city planned to light the water tower for just one night, on the anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising. That was the compromise after 4 or 5 email exchanges I had with the former city manager who kept saying, the water tank is not available for this purpose. Never mind the fact that it was available for Halloween, Christmas, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, 4th of July, and whatever LA team wins a championship. Anyway, after that first night of the tower being lit, the response from the community was so overwhelmingly positive that the city opted to keep the tower rainbow for the rest of June. I'll say it again. When we do good, more good happens. Now, I don't know how many times I've been in your inbox, across from you on a Zoom screen, or here at this lectern, asking you, urging you, or demanding you to do something. Whether it's about denouncing hate groups in town, attacking my very right to be here at this moment, or calling for transparency and accountability from our police department, or calling on you to show active and genuine support for our DEI committee. These are all good things. And just like the water tower, good will come from it. I hope you keep this in mind for future requests from myself and from others when we come here looking for meaningful and good change in town. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pickaver.
John Clinton.
Council members, my name is John Clinton, and I'm an El Segundo resident. I have some similar thoughts as Mr. Baker did regarding the cannabis ballot measure. I'm encouraged to see that the city is drafting its own cannabis ballot measure to provide the best scenario for the city of El Segundo. It is my understanding the city's measure rezones the town to allow these businesses to operate in certain areas currently east of PCH, which the outside group currently does not have on their measure. Again, has there been any consideration on adding some language to provide distance requirements between these businesses? I have concerns, just like Mr. Baker, that if we pile a bunch of these places on top of each other, it's not going to be good for the city or the businesses themselves. With no limit on how many of these businesses can open, a distance requirement may assist in limiting the overall number and provide a better ecosystem for them to succeed. Also, there's no reason, is there any reason not to include the tax component with the city's measure instead of having it as a separate measure? It feels like that would provide some incentive to vote for the city's measure versus the outside group's measure, which does not include any tax component at this time. Lastly, if the city is providing a cannabis measure that allows residents to vote for legalizing the sale of cannabis within the city, what is the need for the outside group's measure at this point? If it potentially provides them with an avenue for opening a business in the city of El Segundo, I'm not sure what the motivation is to have a competing ballot which seeks the same goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Clinton.
David Phillip.
Good evening. My name is David Hollop. I'm an El Segundo resident, parent, lawyer, and small business owner, as well as a member of Sea Change. First, thank you for making the Pride and Juneteenth proclamations today. I'm speaking tonight regarding the incident that occurred on the 800 block of Center Street on Friday, May 27th, and specifically the city's and ESPD's response to it, and the lack of communication and transparency following the event. As far as I am aware, the only updates provided to residents by the city or ESPD were, one, a Nixle alert at 8:16 a.m. that morning that read, quote, advisory, police activity in the area of Center Street and Walnut Avenue. Stay clear of the area until further notice, end quote. I note that it does not appear there was ever any further notice given. Two, a message from Chief Bermudez that Mayor Boyles posted on an El Segundo Facebook group at 5:54 p.m. the next day, Saturday, May 28th. And three, a similar shorter message on the city's official Facebook page posted Monday, May 30th at 3:45 p.m., which was shared on ESPD's page at 5:43 p.m. that day. Based on the updates provided, here is what people on Facebook know from the city and ESPD, and I note that those not on Facebook may not even have heard about it yet. First, that ESPD received a report of suspicious circumstances with a male slumped over the wheel of a car, and when fire department paramedics attempted to contact the person, he was unresponsive, and that one of the paramedics observed through a tinted glass what he believed to be a handgun, so ESPD was called in. A containment area and react team were established, outside agencies were brought in, as well as canines, armored vehicle Bearcats, drones, and crisis negotiators. Several hours into the incident, the vehicle escaped containment, was lost by ESPD, and found several hours later after a call came in for a vehicle illegally parked in an alley near the high school. As far as the public statements indicate, the suspect was never found, nor was any weapon, and no further updates have been provided. Our city's police budget, as I'm sure you all are keenly aware, is always the largest general fund line item. In the 2022-23 budget, the city proposes $20.2 million for police out of the $81.7 million general fund budget, or about 25%, which is in line with prior years. And as disclosed recently in the city's military equipment use policy, thank you to our state government for passing the bill requiring this transparency this year, ESPD has the following military equipment: a tactical Humvee, a Remington 870 Magnum 12-gauge shot lock, 4 40mm single-shot launchers, a Penn Arms 40mm pump-action multi-shot launcher, nearly 600 rounds of various types for these 40mm launchers, over 150 projectiles and grenades, 11 drones, 1 robot, and 25 flashbangs. We devote so much of our budget to the police and give them so much high-powered military equipment and authorize them to use force, including ending life, that the absolute minimum we as residents and you as our representatives on city council that oversee the police department should demand is openness, transparency, and accountability. When there is an incident like this in the city where the police use this military equipment and call in other departments to use even more, and the alleged suspect still then also gets away, all near our schools, the public absolutely deserves to be communicated with timely and clearly, and after the fact to know exactly what occurred, none of which has happened. A thorough investigation should be done into the incident that involves parties outside of ESPD to ensure full independence and transparency, and a town hall should be held so citizens, community members can ask questions. I've seen so many in our community be extremely critical of our federal, state, and local governments and government employees, and we inspect and demand so much transparency and accountability for them, but not when it comes to our law enforcement officers. I've seen this city council grill our city manager, public works director, Rex and Park director, etc., scrutinizing their performance over much less important issues and picking apart budgets that are much smaller and less significant. Yet here, you do no such thing. You rely so heavily on the department's word regarding their performance and their budget and their needs. You don't demand more transparency, more accountability. Why? I think you've seen from the Facebook comments in response to this incident that the community wants more. We can have respect for law enforcement service and commend them when they serve the community well, but that doesn't mean we can't at the same time seek, at a minimum, commensurate, transparency and accountability. In fact, we should seek much more of it from them, commensurate with the amount of money we spend, the percentage of our budget that represents, and the immense powers they have, powers far greater than anyone else in our government. We should demand it and require it. This is the most basic element of American government, accountability to the people. If the police department truly wants to build trust, it must be fully open and transparent with the community, must communicate, and must be held accountable to the community it serves. This is what many of us have been asking for several years, and I'm glad others are seeing its importance now. I hope the city does as well and provides the citizens the transparency and accountability they deserve here and in all cases, and I hope we can learn from this incident to move towards making our community safer for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howell.
To Nick, is Nick here? Okay. Anyone else would like to speak that didn't turn in a card? All right, you're good, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and that closes public comments. City Manager, would you like to address any of those comments made?
Yes, and I actually I will be introducing our Police Chief Bermudez to make a statement on the incident from May 27th. But prior to that, in regards to Mr. Pickhaver's comments on the lighting of the water tower, we actually will be doing that again this year. I know he and I had exchanged emails, and I did share that with him earlier today. So thank you for your comments. And yeah, let me just turn it over now to our police chief to make a few comments on follow-up to the May 27th event.
And I might just add, we'll address the cannabis items when those come up.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. In response to the incident that occurred on Monday, May 17th, I would like to say a few words to you and the El Segundo community. Like many, I was very concerned by what happened on that day. As someone who proudly has worn this uniform for many years, it was unfortunate and disappointing. But like any professional organization, we will learn from this incident and we will improve. I've ordered a thorough review of this incident, including our response, including the use of mutual aid from surrounding departments, our incident command structure, the field operations and tactics that were used, and our coordination with our schools. I want to emphasize we have great employees who are truly dedicated to this community. Unfortunately, this incident happened, and it's a black eye to the department, and I understand that. Lastly, I want to emphasize that we continue to work closely with our schools. Dr. Moore and I coordinate closely. Safety of our students and our staff is our top priority at the police department. We will continue to maintain a high visibility in all of our schools through the remainder of the school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, we are moving on to, let's see here, procedural motions. Read all ordinances and resolutions on the agenda by title only. Would someone like to move approval?
Persick, so moved.
Nichols, second.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, we have to do a voice vote with Councilmember Giroux. Okay. You want to lead that, please?
Absolutely. Councilmember Giroux.
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol.
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
And Mayor Boyle.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, a consent calendar, items 3 through 8. Are there any polls?
Yes, number 7.
Okay. Any others? All right, do we have a motion to approve 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8?
Nichols, so moved.
Thank you.
Pimentel, second.
Okay, Pimentel, second. Madam Clerk, voice vote, please.
Councilmember Giroux.
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol.
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
Mayor Boyle.
Yes. Thank you. Councilmember Perstuck, item 7.
Yeah, I just pulled this because I just want to give recognition to Mr. Lundquist and all the members of the team that have made, thought outside the box to bring a national football team to our town. And, given the changes in what's happening in our town, with need for corporate office space is changing, and thinking outside the box to say, how can we optimize this land? This is a unusual thing, and I just want to thank Richard and his team for making this happen and bringing them to our community, because it's not just bringing them. We now have five teams in our town, but it also just brings the revenue that will come into our town. They'll be eating at our restaurants, going to Top Golf. So I just want to give a shout out and thank you to the team.
Great, thank you. Do you want to move approval?
Yeah, I'll move approval.
All right, I'll second. Madam Clerk, please.
Councilmember Giroux.
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol.
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem
Yes.
Pimentel. Mayor Boyle.
Yes.
All right, 5-0. Okay, staff presentations. I believe we want to move something up because someone's on East Coast time. Is that correct? The meaty one? Lance would appreciate that probably. Are we moving cannabis up?
Yes. Yes, Mayor.
Oh, so 10 will stay, okay, as you have on the script. Got it. Okay, very good. So, item 10, resolutions for the November 8th, 2022 general municipal election with 3 different actions. Darrell?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Do you want me to do it? Go ahead. Okay. So there are 4 different items on tonight, and the first one is calling the general municipal election, which is basically alerting the county as to the calling of the election and which seats are up for council. We have 2 council seats that are going to be up, and we also notify them, this will be all done as part of this process, of the ballot measures that at least one is going to be on the November election, if not 2 others in addition to that. And then there's a resolution regarding the candidate statements, which is pursuant to the California law. So we can go ahead and do those at this time, and then we'll get into the cannabis measures. So unless there's any questions, this is really ministerial as far as the calling of the election, the notification of the county, and declaring the number of seats that are available for on council, et cetera. So the first one is the resolution of the City Council of El Segundo, California, calling a city general municipal election on November 8th, 2022 for the election of 2 city council members and of up to 3 ballot measures. Is ready for adoption.
All right, so remind me, do we need to vote on this one? We do.
Yes.
Okay, we need a motion first. Who would like to move approval?
A motion or
Yeah, we need a motion approving the resolution.
This all these actions on the election items tonight will be resolutions, which will be, they're up for approval tonight. They're not ordinances with first and second reads. These are just resolutions, one read, and either up or down approval or denial, so.
Okay, we still need
It's
a motion first, right?
So a motion, not an introduction.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. Nichols so moved on item 10-1, right?
Yeah, or you could make a motion for all three.
Do you have to read all three? Mark?
Yes.
I can do that quickly. A resolution
Okay,
of
why
the
don't
City
you do
Council of the City of El Segundo, California, requesting the Board of Supervisors of the County of Los Angeles to consolidate a general municipal election to be held on November 8th, 2022, with a statewide general election to be held on that date. And then finally, a resolution of the City Council of the City of El Segundo, California, adopting regulations for candidate statements for City Council candidates for the city's November 8th, 2022 municipal election.
Thank you, City Attorney. Mr. Nichol, would you like to move approval?
I'll move approval of item 10.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Nichol with the motion.
Pimentel, second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, voice vote, please.
Councilmember Drew. Yes. Councilmember Nichol.
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
All three resolutions passed by vote.
Great, thank you. Okay, now the cannabis one. Item 11, resolution submitting a city initiative regulating commercial cannabis to the voters per election code 9222. And Mr. Hensley?
Yes, and I would recommend that the council just open up, or Mayor, you open up 11, 12, and 13 at the same time, since there are overlapping discussion on. 11 is the city's initiative that we've been working on as staff pursuant to city council direction over the course of the last couple months. The second one is really a follow-up and a final action on the council's already determined that the resident or citizen petition was going to be placed on the ballot. This is the actual documentation to do that, and there are a couple of decisions to be made in that regard on that item. And then finally is the tax measure, which would be, as it's been done, if it would be a standalone ballot measure that would be applicable if if one or potentially both of the measures pass allowing the use, then there would be a tax in place. Now, if both pass, if the council puts on a cannabis measure to compete, if you will, with the initiative petition, if the one that gets the most votes would be the one that prevails. So there was a lengthy discussion at the last meeting about combining the tax measure with the city's measure, and I raised that there were some legal hurdles with doing that, and that we would want time to review that if the council wanted to go down that path. And I think it's problematic for a number of reasons, but ultimately the council's direction was to not combine them together. There were concerns about if the tax measure is not a separate measure, then if the resident or initiative petition passes and the city's doesn't, there'll be no tax. And that was sort of a strategic discussion as to what was the better strategy, and ultimately the council directed to draft them up the way that we've drafted them up. So I don't know that you want to, and then, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Quick question for you, City Attorney. If we were to approve this tax measure on here, the proposed ballot tab language, do we have to use that language, or do we get to wordsmith our own later? Because I think that our language on the ballot should be very clear to people that a vote to tax cannabis is not a vote in favor of retail cannabis, because that is a huge misconception. So if we approve this, do we have to use this language as written?
No, this is language that's been drafted by my office and consulted with staff. There can be tweaks made to it. But these decisions are being requested to be made this evening. So if you have some concern with the language, we could certainly go over that and, see what we can do about cleaning that up or making it, draw that distinction.
Well, because in the other ones, the council can, so for if the council goes forward with a council-driven initiative, the council can write its own language for. If it votes to puts the voter initiative on, the council can only pen a opposition.
Correct.
And those are, as yet, blank slates, correct?
Correct.
But for this one, we have language already put in. We would need to adjust that language now from the dais, or we could do that later.
Okay, the questions that will actually show on the ballot, those are in the materials. We've drafted the questions, what the voters will read as far as when they're voting yes or no on their small pamphlet would be the questions that we've drafted. Now, we can alter the wording.
Yeah, that wording needs to be in boldface, explain to people that this is not a vote in favor of retail cannabis. This is a vote to put a tax measure on cannabis if it ever becomes legal in the city.
You understand the concern, right?
Yeah, I do.
Because the concern is it's 50% plus one
Right.
for any of the other initiatives, but a tax measure is 2/3.
No, they're all 50%.
Yeah, this is for a general, it's 50 plus one, but people, the vast majority of people think that if they're voting for a tax on cannabis, they are voting to legalize retail cannabis. And we need to make very clear to them on the ballot that this is a standalone decision.
We can put in a parenthetical.
A big, bold,
yes,
rainbow written unicorn.
Okay.
I got a question. So are we at liberty to talk about all three of these? We didn't introduce you. Okay, so as it relates to the distance parameters that were put in place, you often see those in leases where, you got to carve out no more specialty coffee shops. Have you thought about that one?
Yeah, and, this has been discussed, and Michael, do you have the map? The direction from the council at the last meeting, because there was some concern about the map that we've been working on this iterative process of coming up with a map with the city's council's focus being on allowing cannabis uses east of PCH, which is different than the initiative petition, which allows them in a small part of Smoky Hollow and along PCH, mostly on the west side, but a little portion on the east side. So the direction from council's been that you just want it on the east side of PCH, not on the major corridors, and then there's buffers that are both in the initiative petition and the city's proposed, at this point, draft measure as far as sensitive uses. And the concern we came back last time was that if we were potentially being too restrictive because of the nature of the properties that are east of PCH, very large parcels, very large users, that we were probably being too restrictive about actually being able to have, or that there were actually properties available for the use. And so Michael went back, planning director Michael Allen went back, and based on council direction, which was to open up east of PCH, all of it, except for, again, along the major corridors. And Michael, this is the map that, if you want to go ahead and explain what that then, as you can see, there's a lot of bubbles that are going to exclude, 75% of the property east of PCH. And so those distance requirements, if you add that on, we discussed is you may just eliminate so many, you may just have one or, and then the other question is, because you already have such a limited area, it's not going to be very many, there's just not very many parcels that are suited for it. The other issue is if we get two at the same time, we would need to then, if we're going to put a distance requirement in, put in some sort of language about who gets priority. But Michael, do you want to explain the map further?
Sure. I think you covered it, and we've seen this before, and I've made a few tweaks to reflect the most recent feedback that was provided at the last council meeting. But the easiest way to understand this map now is to focus on the parcels that are outlined in the dark black outline that outlines each parcel boundary. Those outlines are the parcels that are the remainder parcels that are not exempted out, that are either A, not located within one of these buffer areas, which is a sensitive use, or B, not located within or along a major arterial. And so those parcels that are dark outlined throughout this area here, this is the southwestern corner here, and predominantly up here in the northeast corner of the city, would be those that remain eligible. under the current standards. So that is the buffers from sensitive uses, parks, schools, and the prohibition along major arterials.
So then I think it's a matter of council policy as to whether you want to add on to this a distance requirement between, on the east of PCH, the council's initiative, whether you want to add a distance requirement to that. And I can see just from looking at it that, you know, that would on the south end allow one establishment down there, as I see it, right, Michael? And then what does that do, Michael, Alan, on the to the north side? What generally does 500 feet look like?
It's a good question. 500 feet's probably about half this block. So you'd render at least half of these ineligible if one
500 foot is
located.
kind of arbitrary.
Well, I think that was one of the numbers that I've heard thrown out.
Okay,
So.
yeah, I mean, usually it's property to property, you know, usually that's a landlord decision. They don't want to cannibalize their existing business, so they say you can't have another one in this place, but, okay, thanks for that. Any questions from the council on that? Mr. Nichol?
Are we opening up all three of these items like you suggested, or are we gonna separate them out a la carte? We have? Okay. Are we open discussion or questions?
Yeah, no, we're open, open for business.
I'm not a big fan of the, you know, limiting the distance between. I mean, I don't know how much, like we talk many times, we make policy for no reason, right? Chris loves our policies that we have that we make for no reason. And I feel like it should not be in our business. It's not our business to make policy on, you know, on just capitalism. You know, you got two pizza places next to each other. They're both open. I mean, I had breakfast at Metro Cafe this morning, and I felt like I was cheating on Wendy's place, and I walked past good stuff to get there. You know, all three of these restaurants do the exact same thing, and they're within the same city block, right? So I don't see the need to create the distance. I understand the concept of it. I just don't think that that's a business that we need to be in, telling people what to do and how to do it, because there could be two thriving businesses right next to each other, or there could not be. So I do have similar concerns that Chris has in regards to the language on the tax, because the last thing you'd want is people voting no on the tax and no on something else, but then there's not enough yes votes on the tax because some people that are for cannabis are not for a tax on cannabis, and now you have the tax doesn't pass, but the cannabis passes, and I don't know. I mean, we've talked about combining, and I know staff has recommended that we keep them separate, so I'm fine with keeping them separate. I just think that the language should be massaged, and I'm not the one that's going to wordsmith that tonight. So if one of you has a suggestion on that, or if someone on staff can diligently work on language while we're up here filling air with our voices.
I think it would start with something like taxing cannabis does not legalize retail cannabis. It ensures that if retail cannabis becomes legal, the city can fund ...
Well, we have limited words. It's like 66. I'll have to play with this, but what we can do is, after the council's all done, we can take action on what we need, on what you're prepared to, and then while you're doing the rest of the agenda, I will work on some wording to bring back so that we don't have you just sitting up there doing nothing for a while. So I can do my best, and then after you're done deliberating and you're ready to move, then we'll just do all the items you're ready to move on, and then I'll work on some language while you're sitting up there working on the other items.
I'll make a suggestion here procedurally. Why don't we knock out number 12?
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Well, the way this
You got to read the resolution, though, by title only,
Yeah.
Mark.
Okay.
Hey,
This
This one is a no, I mean,
this is
there's
the-
not much we can do with this one.
This is the initiative petition. You're just putting it on, and you're going to decide whether you want to, well, one, you've already really decided you put it on, but you need to pass a resolution to put it on the ballot. You have to decide whether you want me to draft an impartial analysis of the measure, which in this case, I do recommend that you do that, because I will attempt to the extent somebody reads my impartial analysis, I will attempt to clarify so the voter will understand what their voting yes or no will mean when they vote. And
I
then,
remember the last measure we did, which was that it wasn't a retroactive, it was a conditional tax
right,
based on LA County.
correct.
That, okay, I'll get to Lance in a sec, that Councilmember Brand might have drafted that.
Well, there's the.
That's an option, right?
There's a city attorney, impartial analysis, but there's also the council. You have the right to submit an argument. In this case, it would be against. So you appoint yourselves, or some number of you, to draft an argument against that will get published. That is not impartial. That's you essentially being able to politic against the measure.
Great, thanks for clarifying. Councilmember Giroux.
Actually, if we're going to go ahead and deal with number 12 and wipe that off, that's fine. My comments have to do with how some of the things are worded. With what you were going to do, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Lance, you broke up a little bit. I think you're saying knock out 12 and come back to you?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All right, so it sounds like, Mr. Hensley, we have to talk about with 12, the statement that we want to make, who's going to write the analysis, and then whether or not we want to have our own statement.
Do we have to decide tonight which council member has to make this statement?
Not necessarily, well, you have to decide who's going to sign it. Right? How you divvy up and write it, that's up to you.
Can we all sign it?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a decision that you can.
I think a statement from council would be better than, I mean, no offense, but it's hard to understand lawyers.
No, again,
So-
I'm going to do an impartial analysis if you want.
That doesn't
to.
mean that you speak the same language that the
No,
normal
that's
person
correct.
speaks.
That's correct.
All right,
So first is the resolution.
that's just the truth.
Submitting, so first the resolution, placing it on the ballot. There's be 3 decisions for you to make. This will be the first one, just to put it on the ballot. A resolution submitting a voter initiative to the voters pursuant to Elections Code Section 9215, amending portions of El Segundo Municipal Code Titles 4 and 15 to regulate and permit commercial cannabis, requesting Los Angeles County to provide specific election services and setting requirements for filing written arguments and rebuttals, and directing the city attorney to prepare an impartial analysis. So let's actually take out that last part, direct the city attorney. We'll do that separately. So this is just placing it on the ballot.
Okay, would you still like to move approval?
Pimentel, so moved.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
Persick, second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, would you please take a voice vote?
Councilmember Giroux.
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol.
Aye.
Councilmember Persick.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
And Mayor Boyle.
Yes. Let's address the next one, which is directing the city attorney to prepare an impartial analysis. Councilman Nichol, did you want to make another suggestion, or?
Well, that's either a yes or a no.
Yeah, so do you have
We can
another
do
idea?
both, can we not?
What?
Can we do both?
Yes, you can have, I can do an impartial analysis or not.
And you can have,
Your argument is a separate item.
okay. Then I say that we do both, because there
So
are some
you'd like to
people
move
that's-
approval that the city attorney prepare an impartial analysis?
Nichol, so moved.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
Persick, second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, voice vote, please.
Councilmember Giroux.
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol.
Aye.
Councilmember Persick.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
And Mayor Boyle.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Okay, I'm going to defer to you, Councilman Nichol, about the written argument against the voter initiative. Do you have an idea there?
Yeah, I think you and Chris should totally do that. No, in all honesty, though.
Chris's words will just, no one will understand what they're reading.
In all honesty, I think this is really important because, you, like I, have received emails from the public that are not happy because they believe that council is somehow, some way saying that we want cannabis in our town, right? I hope the Herald is listening to this portion of the meeting and you report on this portion of the meeting, because us saying yes to putting something on the ballot is not a council member saying, yes, we want cannabis in this town. I cannot speak for you, but I'm going to speak for myself. Like, I know how I'm going to vote on the ballot, and that is my choice. Just like it's all of your choices, how you vote on the ballot, and every single person sitting here in this room and everyone watching at home. You can vote however you want. That's the beauty of democracy. And we can disagree if we choose to disagree. That is the beauty of democracy. But it has to be clear that the public understands that just because these items are on, we're voting yes to put something on the ballot, does not mean that we are, yes, we're in support of this measure, and yes, you should vote yes on this, and yes, we want cannabis dispensaries on Main Street. I think it's being misrepresented in the news. And yeah, so in regards to these items and writing something, I don't think it would be fair for it to come from my pen personally, because I would have a biased argument to the negative. And to your statement about all of us signing it, I don't know. I don't know if I can personally, an argument in for and or against.
Well, your decision tonight really is, all you have to do is, if you want to, is authorize the 5 of you to sign it. You don't all have to 5 to sign it. You just, if you authorize all 5 and only 2, 3, 4 turn it in, and the clerk will publish it with however many signatures are on it. As far as how you want to divvy up the writing of the argument against, that's completely up to you.
I move that the council pens in opposition to this initiative, and it is open to any council member to sign.
I can concur with that.
I concur as well.
Okay, so
there's a
do we have
motion.
to actually vote on that one too?
Yes.
The process? Okay, so
No,
we have a
just
motion.
you're designating yourselves. Yes.
Yes, okay, so the motion is that we're designating ourselves to file a written argument against the voter initiative.
That's correct.
Okay, I'll second
Also
that.
moved.
Voice vote, please.
That was a Boyle's second.
I got you. Thank you. Councilmember Jur,
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol,
Aye.
Councilmember Perstock,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
And Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
Now, I just want to point out that based upon the information we have from the county, and we'll make this clear to the proponent of the initiative, as well as the other measures, that it appears that the arguments in favor of the ballot measures are going to be due on August 19th, and that the opposition, so in this case, when the council's opposition will be due to this, the proponent's argument will be on August 29th. We're going to confirm all these things with the county, but those are looks like those are the dates. So,
All right, thank you for that one. All right, so we got 13 and 11. 13 relates to the tax initiative, 11 relates to the city initiative. Let's see. Let's talk about the city initiative, item 11. Or do you guys want to talk about them together? What would you like to do?
I'd recommend we do 11 because that gives Mark time to work on 13's
Okay.
wording and remove some ands and change it to an ampersand and semicolons.
Great. Well, let's have some conversation about it, and then we'll have Mr. Hensley read the resolution once we've done that. So any thoughts? Councilmember?
Yeah, I had a couple of things that hopefully I'm not breaking up too much here. It's only New York. One of the things that came up in public comment, I want to get some clarification, is that I think it was Mr. Baker suggested that in our wording, we are banning the cultivation aspect. I don't remember that. I don't remember reading that, and I don't remember us discussing that.
actually, that's not the case. Both the initiative petition and the draft city measure provide that it will be up to the council to determine, pursuant to an ordinance in the future, under what conditions, if any, that it's going to allow other cannabis uses. So it's not prohibiting anything, it's not approving anything, it's just saying it's up to the councils in the future to decide whether they want to allow for cultivation, warehousing, those kind of uses. So that's what it does.
Okay, is that confusing? Or is that meant to give us a little bit of latitude and future councils some latitude?
It's very consistent with what, again, the initial petition was, and we presented it that way, that we were just going to leave it. So this was going to be open in the future for future council to decide. So it was intentional just to leave it open.
Okay, all right, so there's no ban on it. Okay, and the second thing is it the same type of thing where when it comes to delivery, I think the way it's worded is that we are only allowing delivery based on businesses that are in town, meaning no outside delivery services.
We're just what's being proposed, the council will just regulate the businesses, well, actually, let me step back. For purposes of not including the tax measure, for the regulation that the city's proposing for the retail use, that does not really address some business from out of town delivering in the city. The state law has really preempted us from some case law that if someone wants to, from El Segundo, pick up the phone or get on the internet, whatever, and order it from a shop in whatever the nearest legal city is, they can do that, and we can't prevent that. Now, that may be a taxable event, as our consultants have told us, which may then get tax revenues to the cities through the tax measure.
Okay, I think that was one of the things that I mentioned during the last meeting, was that there is a way to find out right now exactly who's doing business in town and how long they've been doing business in town. That is part of the state's oversight. So I know that's available to us. So I just want to make sure that what we're reading is, because I know how things get confusing on this. I know there's a lot of legal jargon that goes into it, but we're not banning making it seriously just retail, because there is business going on in town right now that, should this tax measure pass, we should be able to force a business license to be taken out and being able to tax whatever's being sold. I just want to make sure that we are not limiting, and that we are kind of taking into consideration everything that's at hand.
Correct, and the tax measures drafted, it was done by HDL consulting firm to, as I understand it, very broadly try to capture any revenues that are currently allowed as far as cannabis, and goes into other byproducts, if you will, or what of cannabis, and trying to capture what might be in the future. So it attempts to be all encompassing.
Gotcha. And then on the adding the tax piece into our measure, we discussed that last time, so I'm not going to go in that again. We discussed it. We figured out what the best route was forward, and I think I don't really see any reason to bring that back up again at this point, since we're kind of at the 5-yard line on this whole thing. So that's all I really had on that. I just want to make some clarification, because I think even in public comment, there is a lot of misconception on what we're doing, and I want to make sure that at the very least that it's on record and on video exactly what we are doing and what we are not doing. So thank you very much.
I have a question about the limiting the number of retailers. So is there, similar to the way you just said about the giving future councils ability to adjust, is there a way that we could put language in there that initially limits the number of retailers with the option that future councils can adjust them?
You could do that.
Because that would be, because that way we could, test it, see how it's going, and then give the future councils the ability to adjust it as we change and the environment changes.
We would need to go back and do some redrafting as far as then what the priority would be, because that becomes the source of where the litigation comes from. The other cities that we've seen is when you limit it, and that, if that's what the council wants to do, that is what we'll draft, and that's what the initiative petition does. It limits it, and what may likely follow from that, if the trend holds true from other cities, is litigation will follow as far as the fight over who gets, depending on the number you select. If you pick a high enough number, it becomes less likely, but if you pick a low number, then you'll end up probably in litigation with the businesses fighting over those number of permits.
So to alleviate the litigation possibility, if you did the distance, then you're actually kind of accommodating the same thing. Because
Correct.
if you say it can't be within, X amount of miles or whatever, it's not very many miles, feet, you're actually doing the same type of thing.
Correct.
And then could you also make it scalable, so for future councils to change that distance once it's approved?
We could. And again, this is not a statement in for or against what you're saying. It's just, I want to explain, if you have those distance limitations, depending on what that does as far as what's actually available, you know, for lease or sale out there on the market, we could end up in that same litigation. I mean, it just, the more that it gets tightened down, depending on how many sites are available, the more likely it becomes that you may have litigation. And that's not, you know, we'll deal with that if it happens, but it's one of the things that seems to be happening out there in the real world when there are limits on the number. It's like you have a number of 2 or 3, it becomes more likely you're gonna have litigation.
All right, Councilman Giroux.
Sorry, just one thing. Mark, what I just mentioned on I think it's the wording that is confusing. It states in the staff report, the city hereby expressly prohibits the delivery of cannabis products within the city, except by cannabis retailers based within the city and permitted under this chapter 14.
Where are you reading that?
That comes from the staff report.
What page?
Mark, I'm gonna have to pull it up, but it's in there. I'm just saying if what we're trying to do is give ourselves latitude, but what we're saying in the initiative is something different.
Yeah, I'm looking. Oh, wait a second.
Let's see if I can find it.
He's got it. He's reviewing it right now, Lance.
You know, I'll look at that because that should not be in here. I'm now concerned.
Yeah, I think we got to be careful of the copy and paste from HDL. Okay, this should be something a little bit more unique to us and what we're looking for, and not just a reflection of what goes on in other cities.
Mark, we can state our intent for the record.
Yeah. All right, let me look at that. Okay, we may bring both these back in a few minutes.
Okay, any other substantive changes or comments related to what's been proposed? Good catch, Lance.
What's he talking about?
Not seeing any. Okay. So we have 3 different action items. First is to adopt a resolution submitting a city initiative regarding commercial cannabis to the voters. Mark, could you read that one, please?
One that may need, if I understand this correctly, you're looking at the city's initiative petition on, wait, just a second. This is the actual regulation one.
Okay. Do you want us to contemplate the tax initiative while you dig into this further?
Sure.
Okay. Item 13, resolution submitting a city cannabis tax initiative to the voters per election code 9222. Okay, we'll open it up for discussion.
I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel that we need to put some clear language at the very beginning stating that it's a separate, that this does not actually approve, by voting a yes, it does not approve cannabis in
To
town.
full extent permitted by law.
In the
Okay,
event.
it's not.
Okay, that could be part of either the argument and or the impartial analysis component.
That's not
Any changes or
Yeah,
comments?
on this one, though, we don't get to make the argument. I mean, the argument comes, for the tax measure, the argument will be penned by the city attorney, so we just need to make sure that that part is clear to people.
Yeah, no, there's 3 action items here. The first one being to
very
adopt a resolution, so we're just jumping ahead a little bit. It's okay, no, it's good. Any substantive changes or comments related to the resolution itself as is drafted?
No, I think the material items presented at the last meeting were there. They made some adjustments because we wanted the maximums to be different, so we would have room to adjust underneath on what those tax things would be relative to the market. And I think all those changes were made, so I don't have any, I don't see any further changes on the merits.
I do have one question. Who picks the name of the initiative? And can we identify, like when they did the bond, they did, ES, because that was part of the branding. Can we pick the name of the initiative?
That's for Mark, I think.
You mean the letter?
Yeah, like one of the things when the bond was going through, they really worked hard to get it, vote yes on ES, because it's subliminal, actually.
Like Measure Y for City 1 and Measure N for...
Right, so can we,
You can express a preference, and then it's a matter of working to see if the county will accommodate that. They don't have to, you can ask. So if there's some letter that you would like to use, you can ask.
for yes.
Carol's proposing using Measure Y for the City 1. Do we need to incorporate that into our comments?
For the tax one.
Oh, for the tax.
If you give that direction to the clerk's office, they can talk to the county about whether, they won't necessarily honor that, but they may.
Could we request some letters we don't want?
Yes, I mean, you can
No
request.
D, F, or Q. Measure Q always is defeated in El Segundo history. Like, no Measure Q is ever passed.
I thought it was like just people didn't like those letters or
No,
something.
those always lose. There's a whole science to this.
Okay, yeah.
There really
Leave it
is.
to Chris. All right, so getting back to serious business here, do we...
So is the council otherwise on the tax and the regulatory measure, you're otherwise, with regard to a statement here that I'm looking at, and the issue of the question on the tax, are there any other issues?
Mark, I got no issue on the tax, but again, back on the thing I asked you about on the cultivation piece, where we said that, again, if you look at 414-5B, look at the wording we're using. The number of commercial cannabis business permits for cultivation sites, manufacturing sites, distributing, testing laboratories, and micro businesses shall be 0 unless subsequently established by a resolution of the city council in its sole discretion.
Right.
Okay, but what if someone comes to town and it's already they're a cultivator and retailer, and they want to have a 4,000 square foot space?
They can't, because...
Do we have to come back and redo that?
Yes. No, it gives you the council,
Why?
It gives you the council the right to do it. You don't have to go to the voters. It says it's giving the council the right to do it.
Okay. Any special reason why that would be the case? What's the danger there?
Just, I mean, we could, I'm not certain. So anyway,
what I'm saying is I don't remember us discussing this piece of it, yet it's appearing in this. So I remember at one point we actually said, hey, maybe there should be a cultivation aspect to it in order to have a business. Then we took it away as a requirement because we thought it was going to be too restrictive.
right.
And now we're wording it as, okay, in the end, even if this thing passes, it's really up to whatever council is sitting down to make a decision on whether or not you can actually have cultivation.
That's correct. We did not, this only addresses retail. And I thought we were clear on that. If we weren't,
We weren't clear.
If
that's
we're
for
going,
sure.
if the council wants to include regulations for all of the other uses, then we'll need to.
That's a whole nother discussion
That's-
because
Okay.
commercial cannabis has been banned. There's been a moratorium up until this
Right.
initiative came along.
So I thought it was clear that we were only dealing with retail with this ballot measure.
Okay, all I'm saying is that there are businesses asking things. So what we're saying is if a person, let's just say this thing passes and someone applies for a business license that has cultivation and retail, that will come to the council to decide. Am I correct on that?
That would have to come with also a request to amend the city's code, yes. So someone could apply and say, I want the city to amend its code to allow this.
Could that not be a conditional use permit?
Yeah.
Well, when you go to set up your code for, if you want to allow the other, cultivation, warehousing, there are a number of different cannabis uses that aren't being covered by this. But when and if the council this council or some other council wants to do that, just like other uses in your code, you'll have to set up the mechanism by which you wish to do that. And that's what this does. This leaves open.
It wouldn't be another voter initiative. It would be a decision of the sitting council.
Correct.
Okay.
So this
Well,
is
it
all
could
right,
be
thank
either.
you.
Technically, a dispensary lobbying group could come forward and say, we want to force you to put in dispensaries and go to the voter, the people.
They could.
But we have the ability also to do it by resolution up here.
Well, by your land use rights, it's reserving to the council its land use rights that you would normally have, up to now, the council has, this council and prior councils have prohibited all cannabis uses except for some home cultivation, which state law preempts. So, just for those people listening, it's clear. A citizen put together an initiative process, got the signatures necessary, forced the council's hand, if you will, to put a ballot measure on that would allow 2 retail outlets in town. In response to that, the council wanted to put on its own ballot measure based upon the location of wanting these outlets east of PCH rather than west of PCH, and having more control over it, and also getting rid of some of the more subjective elements of the initiative petition. And so neither one of them were ever intended to address anything other than retail, as I understood it. And the initiative petition from the resident also leaves it to the council in the future as to what you want to do with other cannabis uses, just so that's clear.
Thanks for clarifying.
And I apologize, Councilmember Drew, that sentence in 14-4-1 about prohibiting other retailers from delivering to the city, that should not be in there. I missed that. So that, and it's in a lot of ordinances, but it's not legal any longer. So that would be deleted.
All right, Mark, would you read the resolution, please?
Sure. A resolution submitting to the voters an elections code section 922, city initiative amending portions of El Segundo Municipal Code titles 4 and 15 to regulate and permit commercial cannabis, requesting Los Angeles County to provide specific election services and setting requirements for filing written arguments and rebuttals, and directing the city attorney to prepare an impartial analysis. Is ready for approval?
Okay, just so I'm clear, it's all 3 of these action items here then, right?
Except for, it's 2, the third one will be, again, whether the council wants to appoint itself to draft, in this case, what'll be the supporting argument.
Supporting argument. Okay, great. So okay, so do we have a motion to approve what Mr. Hensley just read?
Giroux so moves.
Thank you. We have a second?
Persick, second.
Okay. Madam Clerk, voice vote, please.
Councilmember Drew?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol?
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel?
No.
Boyles? Mayor
Yes.
Boyles? Sorry.
Yes, Boyles.
Pass.
So my wife calls me too. Sorry.
Passes 4-1.
All right, thanks. So let's get on to Mr. Hensley. Can you just remind us a little context about what we're talking about next with regards to the supporting argument?
So in this case, the council can appoint itself, or like you did last time, authorize all 5 of you to sign an argument in favor. You can determine amongst yourselves who's going to draft that, or however you want to do that. But at this point, you would just be reserving that right to the council to sign an argument that would be drafted by you.
Okay. Anyone like to move approval of that or talk about it?
Can we also write opposition to it?
No.
Got it.
Anyone like to move approval?
Persick, so moved.
Okay, this is again authorizing up to 5 council members to sign it. Mark, you have something to say?
No, I would say if as an individual, you might be able to, I can't really, you might be able to do that as an individual. Okay.
Giroux second.
All right, Madam Clerk, voice vote, please.
Councilmember Drew?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol?
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel?
Yes.
Mayor Boyles?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Great, thank you. Okay, so 13 is done, as far as I can
12.
tell.
So the 13 is the tax initiative, and I will sit here and 11.
Okay,
So I've done,
hold on, Mark.
Okay.
We need to redo the vote because we were talking about 13. We were talking about the tax initiative.
No.
No, we were talking about our initiative.
Oh, we were? Wow.
Yes.
My vote stands. All right. Yeah, my vote's
Claire,
good.
okay, that was the reading of the regulatory measure, and it was voted on. You're comfortable with how your vote was?
Got it.
Okay. That was actually a question.
It's a 4-1
You're
vote.
good
I'm
with-
still comfortable with
okay.
my vote,
All right.
yes. Tax initiative, item 13.
So I will-
Resolution submitting to city cannabis tax
Let
initiative.
me work on the question while you're doing the rest of your business tonight, and I will see if I can, because I have 72 words to try to jam in the concern about making it clear that this is not going to make the sale of, or use of marijuana legal.
All right, so we're going to move on then to, Mr. George, did you want to move up master fee schedule also, or did you want to keep that where it was and talk about pool heaters next?
We move up.
If we could do the pool heater item now, that would be preferable if we can.
Great, let's do it.
Okay.
Repair the City of El Segundo Wiseburn Unified School Aquatic Center pool heater. Who will present on this?
I will, Mayor. Okay, thank you. As you and the council know, this item has been discussed numerous times during council meetings, and as you know, we've been working pretty regularly with the Wiseburn Unified School District. I in particular have been working with the school superintendent to come up with a strategy and a plan and hopefully ultimately a fix for the problems we've been having with the heaters at the Aquatic Center pool. The item tonight, in fact, we do present to you tonight an option that we think is would be the quickest and most and less costly solution for regaining the pool heater activity. As you see in the staff report, we've been going back and forth with a company called Norse Systems, and in fact, we have the senior application specialist, Tom Provost, here in the audience tonight. Thankfully, he joined us, who has put together a strategy and a plan to actually fix the current heaters. The cost for that is approximately $160,000. We've added an additional $25,000 for contingencies and other costs associated with prevailing wages and so forth. As I said, we've been working closely with the Wiseburn Unified School District staff to resolve the issue. The consultant or the company that has submitted this proposal feels that they can fix the problem. Obviously, it may not be a long-term solution, but we do think we can get the pool heaters up and working relatively quickly. Blake Silvers, the superintendent at Wiseburn, has agreed to go along with this strategy. And one of the other pieces that we present tonight in conjunction with this fix of the heaters is that we will re-engage the aquatics ad hoc committee, if you will. As you know, the committee, per the joint use agreement, with 2 city representatives and 2 Wiseburn representatives, we'll be re-engaging that group immediately to not only monitor the fix that will be in place for now, but also look at long-term permanent resolutions to any problems that may come up. So this evening, we are asking that you adopt a resolution, and we'll need this by 4/5 vote, declaring the existence of an emergency and authorizing the award of a contract without the competitive bidding process pursuant to Public Contract Code 1102-20168 and 22050 regarding the needed repair work for the failed heaters at the Aquatic Center. And then number 2, authorize the city manager to approve and execute a standard public works construction contract with Norse Systems International to repair the existing heaters at the Wiseburn Aquatic Center for an amount of $168,510 and authorize an additional $16,490 as contingency funds for these for any potential unforeseen conditions for a total budget of $185,000. I'd like to add, from a fiscal standpoint, over the years, part of the agreement
has been to fund a replacement fund account, which Wiseburn has been doing, and that account currently has $160,000 in it. So obviously that would be the first amount to be spent. So in addition to using that $160,000, it would be an additional $25,000 if needed of city dollars to handle this repair. With that concludes my staff report. I've got our Public Works Director as well as Mr. Prevost from NOR Systems to answer any questions you may have.
I have a question. So originally we had talked about replacing the heaters. Now we're actually keeping the existing heaters and just replacing, or repairing them.
Yes, that's correct.
And then with that repair, is there any type of warranty that comes with that?
Yes, we're going to have a typical warranty for parts and labor for 1 year per our contract.
Yeah, 1 year warranty on parts and labor.
Right. And by the way, I may add to the presentation by the city manager, the parts that we need, we already have ordered the parts to be proactive. So the parts have been ordered already.
I think that we're going to do this because we want this thing fixed and fixed quickly. But with that in mind, do we still reserve some rights that we have a consulting project and report that says this design is inadequate and the failure to put a softener in is inadequate, and we reserve our rights in that regard?
We do have the report that states that obviously the Wiseburn School has a different report that says something different. So
I'm not trying to bulldoze. I'm just saying we're reserving our rights that hey, we don't necessarily agree this is the right
yes,
repair.
that's correct.
We think this will get the pool running.
Yes.
But this may not. I fix tons of things in my house that aren't fixed. They just turn on.
Right, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll move approval.
All right, I'm not seeing anything from Councilmember Giroux. Do we have a second?
No, I'll second.
Okay, thanks. Madam Clerk, please.
And real quick, how long, what's the turnaround time?
As it mentioned on the staff report, to receive the parts, it takes about 3 months, but we already try to be proactive. We have already placed the order for the parts, and we have worked very closely with Tom. So I'm gonna move as expeditiously as we possibly can. My hope is get everything done before end of September.
The manufacturer got to us today.
Whoa.
To the mic, please. Thank you.
The manufacturer got back to us today regarding the lead time of the materials. They said it would take at least 12 weeks for us to receive them. I will commit to the city to give you weekly updates on their progress.
No, I think we thought it'd be faster, but.
Whoa, yeah, I got a big problem with that. That is not what I was understanding was going to be happening. You guys are telling me it was 6 months for brand new heaters. Now you're telling me it's 3 months for replacement parts?
Yes.
If we thought what we're going to end up doing for the school district and the teams that are supposed to be using that pool this season, and what we're going to have to pay to put them in another pool, 12 weeks to get replacement parts? That was not discussed in any time that I am aware of. I don't know if anybody else had that conversation.
No. And is it still an option to get brand new heaters? And what's the turnaround time for the brand new heaters?
Well, yeah, the brand new heaters, we would have to have our consulting firm engaged and work with Wiseburn directly, and we have to have a new design which has to be approved by the state, and then it has to be bid unless the city council wants to waive the bidding process. So that's going to take at least 3 to 4 months more than what we can get them repaired.
That's, I think it's important that we reserve our rights on the redesign, but I will continue in the name of if this is as fast as we can go, then, Elias, you deliver things ahead of schedule and under budget every time. Just keep your foot on the gas. But I have a motion on the floor.
Okay.
There's a motion and a second, so we're ready for the vote. Madam Clerk, please.
Councilmember Giroux?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol?
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
Mayor Boyle.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
both.
you.
Mayor Boyles, do you think it matters that he didn't introduce himself so the public knows who it was that was speaking?
Someone
do-
mentioned, I think Daryl mentioned his name, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did mention his name during the presentation. If you want me to repeat it.
I just want to make sure that so the public knew. Well, who
Yes.
is this person that stepped up to the mic that said that he's going to keep the city
Sure.
abreast as to what's going on?
Yeah, and we obviously will too, Mayor and Council, as staff. I mean, we've discussed the time frame, and we will do whatever we can. We've asked the engineering company to do whatever they can to speed up the process of ordering these parts. I mean, it's just unfortunate that it does take some time right now.
Note to self, do not enter into a partnership agreement again with any facilities for the city. How about that?
I know a pool that might have parts laying around.
All right,
Actually, you've already voted, but let me just read the title.
Yeah,
into
please
the
do.
record. You don't need to vote again. A resolution declaring the existence of an emergency and authorizing award of a contract without competitive bidding pursuant to Public Contract Code Sections 1102, 20168, 22050 regarding the immediate repair of pool heaters required at 2240 East Grand Avenue. And you've already voted on it. So
Thank you.
Just read the record.
Question. There were two recommendations. One was to authorize the city manager to approve and execute a standard public works contract, and the other was a resolution. So is that not two items that needed to be voted on?
I think we all had that in mind.
Well, the public.
Anyone
doesn't know
opposed
you
to
have
what,
that in
I mean,
mind.
did everyone have that in mind, approve the resolution and authorize the pool heaters? Anyone not have that in mind? Let's move forward, thank you. Okay, let's move up item 16 really quickly because we've got the head of HR, Rebecca Reddick, here. And hopefully she can go home for the evening. I think this will be a quick one. Reclassify the city clerk's office job classifications. Mr. George, you want to tee it up, please?
Yes, actually, I will turn it over. Human Resources Director Rebecca.
Thank you. Mayor and members of the council, the item before you tonight is a reclassification of two positions within the city clerk's office. Upon the retirement of the Deputy City Clerk 2, we engaged a consultant to conduct an organizational assessment of the city clerk's office to identify our opportunities for improving services to the city. This study recommended that we reclassify the vacant Deputy City Clerk 2 position and create a new position called Assistant City Clerk. This Assistant City Clerk would manage the day-to-day operations of the office and provide complex support to our city clerk. Consistent with other management positions in the city, this would be classified as at will. Additionally, the Deputy City Clerk 1 position is recommended to be retitled as just Deputy City Clerk and update the roles and responsibilities for that position. The restructuring of the positions in the city clerk's office will clarify roles and responsibilities for internal and external customers, and will also be able to assist the city clerk with the necessary complex support for daily operations of the office. I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for Mrs. Reddick?
Huge
Lance?
improvement.
Okay, let's put these together. There's 4 action items. Approve the reclassification of the Deputy City Clerk 2 to Assistant City Clerk. Approve the reclassification of the Deputy Clerk 1 to Deputy City Clerk. Second one is to adopt a resolution establishing the basic salary range for the Assistant City Clerk and Deputy City Clerk positions. Third one is to adopt the class specifications for the Assistant City Clerk and Deputy City Clerk. And finally, adopt the examination plans for Assistant City Clerk and Deputy City Clerk. Would someone like to move approval on all 4 action items?
First, so moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Nichols, second.
Okay.
A resolution to you.
Thank you.
A resolution modifying basic monthly salary range for a full-time job classifications.
All right, thanks. We have a first, we have a second. Madam Clerk, voice vote, please.
Councilmember Giroux.
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol.
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Good, thank you. All right, we're going to
Thank
take a
you.
quick break. We'll come back at 7:50, please. Thank you. Okay, City Clerk, is that okay? I said to the public on the 50 mark, but we're okay, right? And she says yes, okay. Mr. George, are we ready to continue?
Yes, we are, Mayor.
Okay, we're gonna go on to item 9, I believe. It looks like, yep,
Master
that's
fee
next.
Yes.
Fiscal year 2022-2023 master fee schedule. Mr. George.
Yes, Mayor. This item will be presented by our Finance Director. Oh, okay. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We are opening. Man, I'm off today. Okay, here we go. Before you get started.
It wasn't like this a couple weeks ago.
I know,
was it?
I heard last couple weeks ago was amazing. This is the time and place hereto fixed for a public hearing regarding the fiscal year 2022-2023 master fee schedule. City Clerk, was proper notice of the hearing given in a timely manner?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Has any written communication been received regarding this public hearing?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Public hearing is now open, and I see Dino up here to present. Thank you.
Okay, great. Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. So in 2017, the city contracted with Eric and his company, Revenue Cost Specialist, to do a complete fee study of city, all the fees in the city. Since then, every year we've increased the fees by CPI, and as a best practice, every 5 years or so, we want to go back and revisit to see how processes have changed and how those affect our fees. So Eric Johnson from Revenue Cost Specialist will give a short presentation describing how we worked with the city staff to come up with the current fee or the new proposed fees. So go ahead, Eric. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dino. I assume that City Clerk will change the slides as we go through here. So good evening, Mayor and City Council. I am Eric Johnson from Revenue and Cost Specialist. It's good to be with you again tonight to present this cost of services study. But first, a quick background on RCS. Next slide, please. There we go. Revenue Cost Specialist was founded in 1980. We really pioneered the concept of matching fee revenues with the cost of services in the wake of the passage of Proposition 13 and Proposition 4 in 78 and 79. And since then, we've worked with over 250 different agencies in 5 different states. I myself have been doing this for 32 years. I'm currently the president of RCS. I myself have worked with over 100 different agencies in those same 5 states. Next slide, please. This is a comprehensive study of the user fees, just the user fees, where there's an identifiable user and cost for service. This includes your development and construction permit fees, public safety fees, utility and maintenance, recreation, library, finance, and administrative services. Next slide, please. Oh, and to be clear, this doesn't include impact fees. This doesn't include utility rates, taxes, grants. This is operational fees only. And go ahead and hit the next button. Thank you. So what have we done? We've recast the city budget with a business orientation. We did this because voters told us to. In 1978, they passed Proposition 13, which limited property taxes. Then a year later, they passed Proposition 4, which said that fees that did not exceed the cost reasonably borne of providing the service are not considered taxes. They wanted government to act more like a business and know its cost. But while governmental accounting does a great job of tracking revenues and expenses at the fund, department, and division level, it was never really designed to track. It was never really designed to track revenues and costs at a service level. So we had to create that information. So working with staff, we identify what it costs to provide the full business cost of services to your customers, the public. So there's no city council service or city manager service. These costs, amongst others, are part of the overhead support costs. It's just like when you go to the store and you buy a can of corn, you know that the cost of that can includes the farmer and the canners and the distributors and the truck drivers and the checkers at the grocery store. You know that. Well, we have done that same thing here with the city services. We have identified the full business cost of providing services to your customers. And as a business, you won't stay in business very long if you don't know this information. Additionally, you won't stay in business very long if you're not able to match up revenues with those costs. So we have done this also. For every fee service, we have identified the revenue and matched that up with the cost of providing that service. Next slide, please. So how do we do this? Well, we wanted to start with what are the services being provided. So as Dino mentioned, we had updated this back in 2017. So we started with that list and worked with staff to identify those things that have changed, those things that the city is no longer providing that we can remove, those things that the city is now providing that it wasn't before that we need to add, those things that we want to break out in a different way than we did before. Then we went through and identified what's the time spent of staff and which staff on all these various different services, so that we're allocating out 100% of the time of everybody on everything they do. So there's going to be fee services or personal choice services. There's going to be tax services or community support services. There's going to be overhead services. So everyone's doing something all the time, and we identified 100% of that service time. Then on the cost side, we started with the city's budget. We looked at the actual salaries and benefits for all employees. We developed a cost allocation plan, which we allocate out, equitably distribute the overhead cost for city council, city manager, finance, HR, facility maintenance, fleet maintenance, all those costs that support all the other departments that provide services to the public. We developed a fully allocated hourly rate for every position. So that includes the salaries, that includes benefits, that includes a share of the operating expenses within each department. That includes these overhead costs, these citywide overhead costs from the cost allocation plan, as well as departmental overhead and in some cases divisional overhead. This is the full cost of having an employee there to be able to do their job. Then we match that up with the cost, with that time detail, and so now we know what the cost of the service is. We broke it out between community supported services and personal choice services. I'll get into that more in a second. For those personal choice services, we identified what the current fee was, how the current cost compares to that, and then made recommendations to adjust those fees to, in most cases, recover 100% of those costs. Next slide, please. Because the purpose of this study was, it's been a little bit of time, 5 years, which is best practice for how often you should do this, but things change. Even with the annual CPI increases, things are done differently, and you're doing different positions are doing it, different processes are in place that we need to align these fees with the cost providing the service. And next point. And then in addition, part of the cost allocation plan, we identify what's the amount of general fund support that other funds are receiving. So in some cases, you're able to transfer that back into the general fund to capture that support, and and have a defensible number for that. And we also did this because the voters told us to. They passed a number of propositions related to fees, starting with the Proposition 4 that I mentioned in 1979, which defined service fees as being limited to the full cost of providing the service. Rents and fines are exempted, though, from cost recovery limitations, that you can let market forces determine where those amounts should be set. Proposition 218 limited the property-related fees. Proposition 26, passed in 2010, really codified existing fee-setting practices as Article 13C of the state constitution, and importantly said that fees must be for service directly benefiting the fee payer. You can't have a fee that you're charging to one person to support a service that's being provided to another person. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, there's community-supported services, what we call tax-supported services, and personal choice services, what we call fee-supported services. Community-supported services typically benefits the community as a whole. It's 100% supported by tax dollars because there is no other way to support things like police patrol and fire suppression and street maintenance and park maintenance. Personal choice services, the customer is identifiable, the service is measurable. Most importantly, it benefits an individual or group and not the larger community. The council can still decide to subsidize these fees based on social, safety, welfare reasons, or whatever reason you feel is appropriate. Examples of these are development services, permit fees, and recreation fees. Next slide, please. And within personal choice fee services, there's kind of a breakout there. There's regulatory fees. The customer is required to use the service, required to get a building permit or conditional use permit. The fees are usually set at the full cost of the service, and things of planning, building safety, engineering fees are examples. Voluntary fees, on the other hand, the customer is not required to use the service. They can decide not to take that recreation class or that sports program or go to the library. And so these fees are often more determined by market forces and usually are subsidized. Next slide, please. So another way to look at all this from a picture standpoint, which is how I process things best. Taxes and grants are there to support community-supported services. That's the only place you can fund it from. Fees are there to support personal choice services. But to the extent that the fees don't cover the cost of personal choice services, the only other place to make up that funding gap is from taxes and grants. And we identified about almost $7 million in subsidies in personal choice services. Because these costs are occurring. The question now is who's going to pay for these services? The person receiving the service or the taxpayer? Those are really your only options. And if the taxpayer is going to pay for it, then there is less money for community-supported services that only taxes can pay for, such as police, fire, parks, and streets. Now that $6.9 million number, that's a big number, but we don't think that is a realistic revenue number. So if we go to the next slide, you see we've broken out the costs, and these numbers are in the report, the summary schedule after the text in the report. And so let me just kind of walk through each of these and identify, you see that profit subsidy column, the third column and numbers there, and the total at the bottom is that $6.9 million number. But the far right column, possible new revenue, that we think is a conservative, realistic number, is only 1.6. Let's walk through the reason for those gaps. Within administrative services, we're showing about $165,000 in subsidies, but only $13,000 in new revenue. We've added a new service within graphic design and video production to provide services to those services to the public. I'm trying to be conservative with the revenue projections, so I didn't project any revenues for that if the council goes forward with that fee, because we're not sure how the business community or the community group, nonprofit community is going to react to this service. So again, trying to be conservative, estimated zero revenue there. Building and safety services is just not a relatively minor gap there. Engineering services, the big reason for the gap is there are many services that only happen every 3, 4, or 5 years. We still cost it out. We still have to identify the cost, but we're not projecting revenue because it may not happen for a couple of years. So that's the reason for the gap there. Fire services, not a big gap between subsidy and new revenues, but it's a big new revenue number. We made a lot of changes in fire on the prevention side, broke out plan check and charged for plan check in a different way than the valuation method that currently exists. On the inspection side, transitioning to more of an actual cost basis where the inspectors track their time and bill back their time. On the Coupa side, we identified the amount of effort that's being spent on these various Coupa services today, and it's a lot more than it was even a few years ago. So we wanted to identify what is that effort and what are those costs, and all those combined together are making for a big new revenue number of over $1 million within the fire department. Library services, we're not really recommending fee changes there. Those fees, those minor fees that exist are heavily subsidized. Planning services, relatively minor change there. There is a new pre-application fee. That's a big reason between the subsidy number and the new revenue number, is that we're not exactly sure how the market's going to respond to that. It's a voluntary fee for a pre-application. I put in some revenue, about a 25% of the cost as a ballpark estimate. But again, just trying to be conservative with the revenue numbers. Police services, there are certain services within police that are not designed to raise revenue. False alarm response, loud party response, they're more designed to generate good behavior. And so we're not projecting any revenues there, even though there's a lot of costs associated with those. Public works services, the big difference there is the delinquent utility billing. As you know from COVID-19, there hasn't been delinquent utility billing or turnoffs going on. And as that kind of ramps back up again, just left the projected revenue at zero, just again to be conservative. And then recreation services, even though there are some fee changes recommended from staff on various different services, I put in zero again to be more conservative. I'm not sure if staff will have some additional changes to that. And one thing I did want to note that fire is adding a false alarm service also that's included in here that doesn't have any revenue projected either. So really our goal was to identify the full cost of the various services. RCS and city staff have made few recommendations for every service. It's now up to the council to decide which services should be charged the full cost and which services should be subsidized with tax dollars. Again, the costs are occurring, and the question is who's going to pay for it? And that concludes my presentation, and I'm certainly available for any questions.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Lilio. I'll entertain some questions or comments from the council.
If I can just make one quick comment. So in 2017-18, when we first did this master fees study, council did approve a policy of cost recovery of 100% of fees that were not park, recreation, aquatic related. So that's the fees proposed to you tonight, before you tonight, that's 100% cost recovery. But as Eric said, ultimately it's up to council what that cost recovery objective is. But what's proposed tonight is 100% cost recovery. And then on the rec, park, aquatic programming, the programming overall is a 40% cost recovery. That was council's policy. So you may have some individual fees higher than 40% and some individual fees lower than 40%. But overall, encompassing the program is 40%. So just adding a little bit of commentary there.
Thank you. All right, public hearing is now open for public input. Madam City Clerk, is there anyone in attendance wishing to speak?
I do not have any speaker cards.
Okay, thank you. Stating your last name, would someone like to move approval to close the public hearing?
Persick, so moved.
Thank you.
Pimentel, second.
Thank you. All those, well, I'm sorry, voice vote, please.
Councilmember Drew?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol?
Aye.
Councilmember Persick?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel?
Yes.
And Mayor Boyle?
Yes.
Okay, closed. Bye.
Okay, thank you. All right, council comments or questions?
I have a question. So I was noticing on the rec park card registration, you guys looked at it from a perspective of just the fact of the physical fact of getting the card made, when really the rec park card registration is to help offset the total cost of the park. So I was kind of surprised to see it isolated just to as the maintenance of actually the physical activity of getting the card, when realistically the fee for the card is really to help offset. So I actually would like to look at looking at that total cost to get a rec card, maybe increase that, so we're not nickel and diming in other places. I think we should take a broader look at our rec parks and say, to get a physical card, I think is it $15, $10 to get a card? Maybe we go to $25 to $30 for your card, and then we don't nickel and dime people. I would rather take a broader approach to that. Then the other thing is, as I go through the fees, and we just did the gala, it cost the Ed Foundation close to $1,500 to have an event on public land, private land, that's what I meant. And I just feel some of these costs, like the tent permit went up dramatically, amplified sounds doubled. If we want to encourage like clubs and, to have events in our city, we're really prohibiting that. The other one was the traffic control, that jumped dramatically, so for the car show, and sometimes things don't just fit in a box, and I think we need to take a holistic view about what we're really trying to accomplish. And then the other one is the filming. I know historically, the school district had a lot of filming, and then they started charging a ton of money, so they lost all the filming. So sometimes it's better to get a little piece of the pie rather than not getting any of the pie. So I just want to make sure we look at this. And the last one is the non-sufficient funds check. That went up dramatically too. Generally, if you don't have funds in your checking account, it's because you're maybe having a hard time, paying Peter to pay Paul, and I don't want to penalize people that are already having a hard time. So those are my...
Can I ask, some of these went up so dramatically, is that because the total cost, is that because of the cost of medical goes up, and we're taking our cost of employment, and that is the total cost of these things? Are these things that are, because some of these have gone up so dramatically. I mean, some of these have quadrupled, and is that because the cost of staff behind those have gotten that much more expensive?
Typically, no. Typically, when you have a dramatic increase, it's because the amount of time spent on that service has changed dramatically. Right. And so where you're seeing that, and that's just different processes, different things that are required, that were required 5 years ago as part of development process. So that's.
Eric, I mean, the amplified sound permit has gone up, it's almost doubled. Have there been
Yeah, went from
enormous advances in
161 to
processing that permit?
Let's see.
I can add a little bit of commentary, but, so, you know, again, the fees before you are 100% cost recovery. And I know back in 1718, the amplified sound permit, the special event permit, that was also a heavy discussion. And from what my memory recalls is that council decided not to do 100% cost recovery on those back then.
That may be the case, because we beat up on that one as emblematic of the one that no one ever gets because it's expensive and it's cheaper to just pay the fine.
Which would include like the traffic control that you mentioned as well, Councilmember Perstick. And so now that variance between 100% cost recovery back then and now today is also increased quite a bit.
In terms of some of these other ones that typically someone in plan check would get together, so some of these ones that are heavily around industrial facilities, whether it's vapor and gas plants and these things, those are typically being handled all at once. Someone calls in someone for a plan check all at once on those. Do they pay for that hourly fee of the person looking at it a la carte? Or if someone comes in and looks, if we review all 5 items on page 11 at the same time, would they pay $355 once, or would they pay 5 times $355?
I believe it's one time.
Maybe one time?
Yes.
Because again, we're trying to incent compliance, not we don't want people just just suiciding and saying, I'll take the fine, because the chance of getting caught is low.
That is correct. And then also, Councilmember Perstick, to your point about the nonprofit, so we do have an approved list by council where we're subsidizing some of these fees for the nonprofit organizations at certain levels.
Can we look at that again? Because we didn't, they did not get a subsidized cost on a lot of the stuff.
Absolutely. We can bring that list back.
Foundation, but I'm not sure when the last time we looked at that list, and clubs and things have changed in town. I just want to make sure we look at it. Yep. Take a better look at it.
And then,
but I do think we should really, I would really like to hold off on recs and parks and really take a broader approach to it and look at the rec park card as the rec park card was to pay for use of the amenities, not to get a card. The card has no value, but it's the access to the amenities. And how do we look at our, one of the things that we've talked about is that we don't have the money to fix all the capital improvements that we want to do. So maybe, do we go to the community and say, hey, we need to increase the rec park card so that we have more cash to start fixing some of our capital improvements. Just take a different approach to it, because I was just kind of surprised it was the way it was listed. It's almost like it was an entity, and it really isn't.
So I believe the rec park cards, I'm trying to find that fee, and I believe there is a proposed increase on that. And I believe it's $5 right now compared to the.
And I'd rather that go up than.
Sorry, the $5 is probably the cost of that plastic card running through the machine and the staff member at the checkout building.
Right.
Right, that's what we identified as the cost.
I mean, I think the biggest, Carol, to segment out this rec park card conversation is, I just wish mine would just renew automatically.
Yeah.
Every single time I go to use it, it's expired. And then I don't even know if mine's currently active or if I need to go get a new card. It's like, I don't want to collect these cards. I don't like the way I look at any of the photos anyways. So if I could just go to the pool and it's like, yes, my card is active, and you want to talk about free money, set it, get guys like me to set it on auto renew.
Right.
And there's your revenue, right? I mean, cost recovery. But to that point, I'm not going to belabor this. I mean, if I lost that card and I need to go get a new one and it costs me another $5, so be it. It is the cost.
I know.
There's much larger fish to fry in this.
Yeah.
So.
I just wish we would. Sometimes you can't put a square like a
round peg.
Round peg in a square hole. And I feel sometimes that's what we're doing, and we just kind of move it along. And I think we just need to take a much more holistic approach to how we look at our rec parks.
Can we bring the rec park card back as a sub-item on a future agenda so we can really dive into it?
So this is a public hearing. I don't know if we have to like renotice, so do a brand new public hearing for.
I just mean that's just, we could just talk about that whole process separately.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's fun and exciting.
Yeah, if we want to take out the rec park programming, is that the direction of I'm hearing, or just the card?
Just the card.
No, I wouldn't even take it out of this, Carol. Honestly, I'd keep it in.
Just revisit at a later date.
Yeah, just revisit it at a later date.
And then the tent permit, why did that go up 3 times?
I'm not sure. Michael,
And do you mean, is it like a tent permit for someone having an event and they need a tent? Is that what that tent is?
Yes, it's over a certain size.
Would it it tripled?
Do you happen to have the reference number on that?
Yeah, it's FR8A, and we took another look at how much time is being spent there, and it typically requires a couple of trips out, and so that's why the time increased and therefore the cost increased.
But so is that just a 10 by 10 tent?
No, this would be something over 400 square feet.
Just the ones I dread, some of these like that, the hazmat permitting in the reviews by staff. I mean, the hazmat permitting is like $4,000 from $1,500. I mean, I think we want people to get their hazmat permitted, and I realize there's the cost of recovery, but I think we also want to make sure that we can put some logic behind why, those sorts of fees are that expensive. When you have someone who, if they're like, oh, well, if I had just bothered to get that permitted last year, I would have saved $3,000. It's just massive jumps on some of these things, just massive.
Yeah, and in the Koopa area, they have just a lot more requirements than that have been put on them. We took a whole nother look at the amount of staff time that was being spent on that, and that's really the reason for the big jumps in the Koopa program. And so you can see that detail in the bulk of the body of the report. There's the matching pages for every service where you can see how much staff time we've assigned to the various different services. And in some cases, in the Koopa area, it's substantial.
And I think it's important to point out that the Koopa fees really only impact a handful of businesses, particularly one business in town.
Well, and title variances, that's a $15,000 whack up from $6,800 or something last time. I mean, those are just things that it's rationalizing that to people is really difficult. So I just don't. Look, we're not going to go through this like the entire Chili's menu and cherry pick things, but it's also important that people are going to get sticker shock on these things. I mean, real sticker shock.
Councilor Giroux.
So is part of the reason why all these fees look so dramatically larger than before because of the fully allocated hourly rate component? That's the canopy you put up there? Because I know when we went through the El Segundo Aquatic Center numbers not too long ago, that there was some big questions on how we were calculating the expenses of that pool.
Right, we had identified the overhead cost is included as part of that, so they got their share of the cost allocation plan, for instance, and when we're developing those fully allocated hourly rates. But broadly speaking, there's been increases to the fully allocated hourly rates. The salaries have gone up, benefits have gone up, et cetera, but not dramatic increases. So that's when you're seeing dramatic changes in the fee, it's either because staff took another look at really the time they are spending on that today, and it increased, or as Joe mentioned, it's something where in the past it was subsidized. In most cases, that's not the case, but in some cases that is, and we're recommending 100% cost recovery.
So, for example, on something like the pool, you would basically have to take all the user groups and triple their rates in order to even come close to 100% cost recovery.
When it comes down to it, yes. because pools.
I mean, that's a
because-
non-starter when you really think about it, though,
It
right?
is, yeah, it is a non-starter because pools are not designed to cover their cost through fees. And so pool is a specific example where when you look at the full cost and including all the support cost of everyone associated with that, it's not going to come anywhere close to recovering its cost.
Okay, so then why does your document mention 100% cost recovery?
Not for pools.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's just that, it did, for the Wiseburn Aquatics one, it does. All the other ones were 40, that one says 100, unless I read it wrong. I don't think I did.
You are right.
Thank
That's my mistake.
Yeah, on the summary
I did not say
page,
that.
the summary page is then probably incorrect, but the fees are not for the aquatics program. We're not proposing 100% cost recovery.
So that's just programming is what we're talking about there? Because it just says Wiseburn Pool.
Right, all
That's what I'm
the
looking at.
programming that happens at the pool.
Okay. Right, because the programming is the only thing that generates the revenue. So, okay, so what you're saying is that shouldn't be 100%, that should be 40.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So I just have a philosophical issue, is that we are paying through the arts and culture money to run an art walk, to bring people to our town, to bring, revenue to our town, to our restaurants. Yet we're tripling in times and doubling fees to clubs to bring people to our town and revenue to our town. Like it's philosophically doesn't make sense to me. And I have a hard time, understanding that. And
Yeah.
I think we need to take a broader look at that. And if, like for the car show, for the Richmond Street Fair, for the PTA run, all these things that we do it's the same as the art walk, but yet we're taking money from the city, from the arts and culture to $50,000 or $56,000. Yet yet we're going to charge more to these other clubs. So I'm having a really hard time with that distinction, and so I think we need to decide upon that.
Yeah, so, I mean, just to add a little bit additional information to that, so our fees are not based on, who we're charging, it's based on.
I understand, but that's why I think you can't just, apply black and white, fees to everything. Because we have to, collectively as a council, to meet to decide, if we're trying to bring events and to our city that drives revenue, then we shouldn't be charging for those, for those events to happen. Because I know for a fact, like at one point the band, the high school band, was trying to run a Halloween haunted house, but the fees were so astronomical, the effort wasn't even worth it, so they didn't do it. And I worry that as we continue to increase these fees, we're just killing an industry, and we won't be bringing people to town.
So maybe my recommendation would be, we can reevaluate that list of nonprofits that we're subsidizing for. But I think it's vitally important that we know what is the subsidy that we're providing. Because without that, we're still incurring these costs of whether it's providing police, public works staff for traffic control, whatever staffing that we're providing, and equipment and review of plans, there is a cost there.
I understand there's a cost, but there's also a benefit, right? So when we...
But Carol, I'll play devil's advocate. All those clubs, I'm a member of one. We put on a fair, we get sponsor money, we charge everyone to have their booths. I mean, the Kiwanis Fair is it is the largest fundraiser the club currently has, right? So funds are being generated. So I understand your point, but clubs can come to us and they can ask for a fee waiver on certain events and things, and we can make that decision there. I think your point is well taken. I think staff totally understands it, and it's something, the scorecard is there for us to look at the scorecard, who qualifies for what reduction, right? And
I just want to be consistent. And
the scorecard is there, so we can review that scorecard again if we need to.
Yeah.
But the scorecard is there.
Can we bring that back?
If you like, we could bring it back on, I think there might be time on June 21st. I'll need to talk to John Jones.
But with that said, that scorecard, let's say, you qualify for a 50% reduction. well, if we don't do anything and we just push all these fees forward as they're presented to us, well, the fee went up by 75%. So it's still going to be a big hit for any of these groups that are doing it. So, looking through here, Joe or Mr. Mayor, do you care if I go, or I'm going already?
No, go.
Okay.
I'm just listening.
Joe, on page 133 of the 811-page agenda, if you look to it,
Yes.
reference number PL055, is this a typo? It says new $555 per application, recommended fee new $60 per application. Was it supposed to be 55 and it's going to 60?
No, there's a lot that have dropped. The animal registrations dropped. Fortune teller down this year, I noted.
But the renewal is only $57, or was, and now the renewal is more expensive, and the renewal is more than a new application. So I was like, okay, I'm just trying to understand. I'm hoping it's a typo, or I'm not sure, but that's not my primary concern, but it's something that I want you to look at before we move forward and say, yes, this is it, because otherwise you're going to be coming back to clean that up when somebody comes in for an entertainment permit.
Right, and that is not a typo, by the way.
It's not a typo?
Not a typo.
So how does it cost more money to renew an entertainment permit than to get a new one?
Because the extra processing involved in sending out the renewal notice, as well as taking that in and receiving that and that money. In this case, it does take just a little bit more time.
So why would I ever renew? Why wouldn't I just come and get a new one each time?
Well, it's an unusual situation that typically doesn't happen, but.
Well, then let's try to apply common sense and just charge the same fee for the renewal.
Good.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah, we can do that.
Thank you. Moving on, the 2 items down, right? Amplified sound permit. This is one of those ones, it's low-hanging fruit. We want people to come get this permit. If we keep increasing the cost of it, they're just not gonna pull the permit. And I'm sorry, but Chris, remind me, do we have a mechanism by which to enforce these permits that are either in effect or not in effect?
The 2 we issue every year for that, we do not.
Oh, okay. But, so something like that. I understand it costs more to issue it now, but if the goal is to get people to get the permit, then, raising that by almost $100 is probably not wise. Sorry, Joe, we're gonna go on our little ride here together. So,
I thought we said we weren't going to go through these lines.
but there's a ride.
Somebody up here said this.
There is a ride here, because I know Chris is going to talk about the fortune tellers, the pawn shops, and the bingos.
I got it in earlier. I'm not
But
even
no,
pool
but
hall.
they're, okay, so, page 142.
Okay.
Very bottom of the page. Banner hanging. Goes from 182 to 815.
Yes.
Who hangs banners on Main Street?
We have several.
It's a rhetorical question, but it's mostly like AYSO sign up, Run for Education, the fair, Hometown Fair, 4th of July, the Ed Gala. Like it's all nonprofits and it's all things that add to a community. So I get it. It costs us money to hang that banner.
Yes.
And I think this is one of those ones that falls under the category that we kept it low.
We did last time as well.
And now it's
Correct.
doubled again.
Correct. So we want to show 100% cost recovery, but
Yes.
the policy last time was to keep it at the lower dollar.
Yes. So I'm going to say on that item, I'd like to keep it at the lower dollar because the fact of the matter is it's just cost prohibitive. Sorry, I'm moving on. Oh, I had a question.
Wait, before you do, Joe, are there others? Do you have a list of other items on here, other fees that we said we wanted to keep at the lower, less than 100%? Forget about recreation, but were there other items just so we could review those?
I think those were the main ones. The banner hanging, the block party, the special event permit.
Okay, so there's a handful. I don't remember.
Amplified sound.
Appeals are another one.
What was the other one?
Appeals to the Planning Commission, appeals to the City Council.
Yeah, that went,
Appeals,
that went from 20 to basically 3,000 to basically $6,000 to appeals.
I think it would be helpful to know, before we continue, just real quick, just procedurally, where we were on those items last time relative to the cost, what % of cost recovery we were getting, because what we have before us is just 100%. Correct,
Yes.
on all those items.
Yes,
I agree. I mean, reading the staff report, I was really hoping that there was going to be like a short list of, okay, last time we did this, these are the items that you guys didn't move up on, or hey, here's a list of the items that have changed for more than 50%, right? I just, for how the report gets presented to a future council, because it's going to be 4 years from now, right, when it's likely comes back.
Right, 4 to
And
5 years now,
Yeah, 4 to
yes.
5 years, so that would be my recommendation of how it's done. But I do have another question, sorry, they're not never ending, they will end, I promise. On page 143, what is a self-haul waste permit? Is that like, I'm not gonna contract with with Edco and I'm gonna self-haul my trash?
That's right.
Yes. Correct.
And so it used to be no cost, and now we're gonna charge someone $790? Is that annually? So it will cost them more to self-haul their trash than it will to contract with Edco.
And I don't know if this is, I don't know if you can speak to it.
But you don't have to break your boxes down.
It may not be residential, it may be commercial, I'm not sure.
It could be either or.
Either way.
I mean, yeah.
Problem is now with the state, I mean, Elias, you can explain this better than I can, I'm sure, but with the state solid waste regulations, everything has to be reported, which is why it became such a difficult issue on the business side, which we don't have a franchise for. We had to establish regulations to monitor, because they don't self-haul, but they contract with different haulers. And so we have to monitor this all by law. So I don't know, Elias, if you can add some color to that?
That is correct. So any hauler who operates in this city by law now, they have to report back what percentage of whatever collected is recyclable. Where did they deliver the recyclable? That includes wood, it even includes the dirt, anything and everything. And we have to follow up with the report, and we have to submit that report to Cal Recycle, which takes a lot of time, a lot of initiative. And as time goes on, it's getting more and more sophisticated. SB 1383 added a lot more requirements. So granted, we got a $26,000 grant from Cal Recycle to help out, but the cost to keep up with that is a lot more than the grant that we received.
Okay, so I'm just gonna play devil's advocate real quick. You own a house in town and you don't live at it, okay? You use zero water, okay? Your water bill is already $75 a month for using zero water, okay? And then you say, you know what, Edco, I don't want trash, so I'm gonna let my trash cans go. And then the city's gonna get notified that there's an address that doesn't have trash pickup, and what, are we gonna then potentially charge them $790 because they're self-hauling the minimal trash that they collect when they visit this home?
Actually, if you do not inhabit a home, and you're willing to give up the right to occupy that, you can have the water and the wastewater and all.
You can, but you visit it from time to time.
Well, unless you want to go through, I mean, in theory, then you can pay to get it reestablished every time. I mean,
No, but I'm just saying, I want to understand how this works, because if someone's like, hey, I'm at this house 15 days a year, the little bit of trash that I produce, I throw in my neighbors, or I take it with me, like.
So here's based on my experience, as long as the home is livable, and as long as utilities are connected, then the city has no way of proving that no one has been living in that house. There might be housekeepers, there might be visitors, so the house is livable. And by law, and by keeping the premises clean and the environment, including the alley and the street, the trash needs to be collected, the bills have to be collected, as long as the utilities are kept connected to the house. Now, if the property owner decides to take a 9-month go outside of the country for any reason, and no one is going to come in and gets in or gets out, if they want to shut off all the utilities, well, that's a different story. But as long as utilities are connected, as long as the water there to irrigate the environment, the housekeeper comes in, the gardener comes in, it is a livable. And by the city code, we have to collect these because it is a part of the urbanized household where it is a livable site. I'm not sure if I'm clear.
It makes sense. I'm moving on. I just hope that we don't charge somebody $790 to throw out a bag of trash, but I got more, so I can move past that one.
Mr. George.
You know, I was just wondering if I could suggest, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of questions on what, 600 and something pages of fees here. If we maybe bring this back on the 21st, and in the meantime, I can do two council meetings, two council members can meet with us individually as part of my one-on-ones with you.
I
and
recommend
we can-
Councilmember Nickel.
I just have two more.
No, but I share the same concern, actually. It's like the point that I made about a summary of the changes that are much more dramatic than last
I
time,
mean, the
or
block party
significant.
permit goes from $25 to $430.
Yeah, it would be helpful to.
And what we can do is zero in on those that have increased, as the Mayor Pro Tem said, you know, more than 100%, for instance, and that way you can have.
Or even just a departure from past practices. Like, if we've already discounted in the past, like these block, would be similar to what Chris suggested. But yeah, in a table, so we can focus on it versus lost
Yeah,
in
we
a
may want to
400
just
page.
highlight the ones that are moral hazard that we keep suppressing, or ultimately move them in their own column and say, these are the ones that we determine are also public goods that we're going to subsidize, and we're going to put them over here.
Yeah, we can absolutely add a table, if
Because-
council's desire is to continue this to the next,
Because, I mean,
council
we
meeting.
brought up a bunch of stuff tonight, yet we haven't changed anything. It's like, so it's just like, it's mute because nothing's been changed. So I think it's wise if two of us sit and go line by line and then present to the rest of council some of our recommendations.
I propose you and Scott, if you're open to it.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Scott?
Second.
All right. Are you
Voluntold?
Are you willing to do it?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I've gone through my list, but I think it would be helpful if we had the consultant, because he likely has this on a spreadsheet, to just run a simple equation, which, you know, what has changed more than 30%, 40%, and it says yes or highlighted, you sort by that, and then we can get some of that high level stuff, so we do not have to sift through, because it's 500 and something pages, just this item, the staff report on this item, right? So I searched for the items that I recalled from 4 years ago when we had this discussion, and kind of picked those out, but that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Because
Great, moving on, thank you.
Can I just ask
Yes,
clarification? So how do we do this from, because this was a public hearing, do we?
Continue it?
Mr. City Attorney, do we continue the public hearing?
Yes.
We're going to continue the public hearing until June 21st, right? Yes.
And with the subcommittee.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, Tracy? We have consensus, correct? Yes, all right, thank you. All right, we're gonna go on, are we ready, Mr. Hensley, for item 13?
I have some language, and we can throw this up on the screen for you all to see. And what I would suggest is if this, let's go through it and see if this works for the council, and if not, then I'd probably recommend we work on this and bring it back, because there's, at the next meeting, the issue is that we have to, by law, include a number of things in this question now. Over the last approximately 10 years, there's been a number of changes that you have to add, the amount of revenue being adopted. There's a number of things you have to include in the question, so it makes them clunky even when you're, you know, it makes them more clunky than they used to be. But so anyway, if you want to take a look at this language and see if this works, I try to make it very clear in a parenthetical that a yes vote does not make the sale of cannabis legal.
Can we just move that to the start? Because that is the central part of this, the shalls and wherebys and whences. This reads like the Magna Carta. Let's just start with a yes vote does not make the sale of cannabis legal.
The question has to start with shall. I mean, the ballot measure has to start with the word shall. So
How about shall, parentheses,
if you
a
want,
yes
yes.
vote does not make.
Yes, you can do that. You can put it wherever you want, wherever you think it fits best. And I thought it read a little better towards the end, but you know, that's.
No one will get to that. No one will get to that. They honestly will be way into the Magna Carta by then.
Okay, and you can thank your state legislature, because the last couple sentences, or the last couple lines, are things that we just have to put in now. And council.
I mean, that's as
comfortable with
close as we can get. It's so jargony, you know? It really, it's like we just want to explain to people, you know, I realize that there's a finite number of words and then we have to include all of that stuff, but I think the
Well,
salient
you can
thing.
do, I mean, you can, I mean, if, you know what we should do, I think, is probably bring this back to the next meeting. We can have some one-on-one discussions about language. There is, language that has been found to, you know.
I mean, I would sacrifice graffiti removal and all of those things to continue to explain to people that this is a vital portion of this to compensate for the impact of the city. So if we have to bring it back, if it's not gonna hurt us on timelines, you know, I'm happy to.
Well, the next meeting will be, unless the council wants to call, you're scheduled to be dark. And so next meeting will be absolutely your last meeting, unless, your opportunity, unless you wanna come together when you're not scheduled to be.
June 21st, if all we're doing is voting on a phraseology, I think it should be fine.
Okay.
Do we want, it doesn't make sense to address the others then, the other two action items here,
Correct.
right? Okay,
We'll
great.
just bring those at the next meeting.
All right, coming back June 21st, more continuations. All right, thank you, Carol. Item 15, staff presentation contract with Swoop Inc. to provide the 2022 Summer Beach Shuttle services. Who will present on this?
Yep. Ryan Delgado on, Ryan, thank you. Did we lose Ryan?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem City Council. Ryan Delgado, Recreation Supervisor for the Community Service Department. The item you have before you is in regard to the contract for the summer 2022 beach shuttle that will run during June, July, and August. The beach shuttle is run every summer since 1985, except for 2 summers taken off during the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic, along with changes in licensing, have made it very difficult to hire and retain qualified drivers. The department did not have enough staff to offer transportation services and put out a request for proposal for on-demand transportation on March 17. There were 2 bids received for the RFP. One of the bids from Swoop showed that they are qualified and can support transportation operations for the summer 2022 beach shuttle. Tonight, staff is bringing a formalized contract between Swoop and the city. Staff respectfully requests council approve the contract so that staff can prepare and offer the beach shuttle this summer. And then I have representatives from Swoop here if you have any questions. Mir Gorbani, Alex Merced, and Pete Evanson.
It's good to see a homegrown El Segundo company bidding for some government work too. It's nice.
I have a question. So is the plan to mirror the program exactly?
Yes.
And have the same pickups and
Same.
same drop-offs? Drop at Rec Grand going to El Porto?
Correct. Yeah, it would be the same start time, same stop time, same locations,
And then-
pick up and drop off.
Do the kids have to have a card, which we talked about, or can they have, and if they don't, how much it is, and is there a way we could have some type of QR code on their phone, or can they use the card on their phone? Because a lot of times the kid won't have their card, but a picture of their card, like how do we?
When it comes to the Rec ID, there's a few different ways we can figure it out. When it comes to, just quick search online or printing cards or paper cards or things like that. Very easy, something we can work out.
Because
And
the kids will have their phone.
Yeah.
But they won't necessarily have their card.
Take a picture of it, keep it on there. We'll accept that. All our cards have, identification marks for the year, so will be really easy to spot, even if it is just a photo.
Question for you. Before we stopped running the beach shuttle, because I saw it said that we're going to be doing afternoon pickups for junior guards at El Segundo Beach.
No, we did not do that last summer in the afternoon for the JG pickups. With that lot and the timing of it, it can keep the shuttle within that lot for an hour. And then some of the numbers I had showed, our ridership was really, really low over the program course. There was less than 5 riders over a 2-year period.
Oh, I didn't even think about because the shuttle could get stuck in that lot.
Yep.
Okay. So, because I didn't see that on the map. And I thought, gosh, in the last 2 years, especially with COVID and the shuttle not running, El Segundo Beach is, for me who grew up here, no one went to El Segundo Beach. No. Everyone went to El Porto. And one of the reasons was because the beach shuttle dropped you off 40th Street, right? And it was glorious. But now, lots of people from town have taken pride in El Segundo Beach. And they love going down to El Segundo Beach despite it having really bad shore pound. And so I can see that I'm sure we'll get some emails through the summer like, gosh, why doesn't the shuttle stop at El Segundo Beach? Or why doesn't it do this? There's no real like inlet or spot for it to do a quick drop off and a quick turnaround without going full circle in that lot, right?
Yeah, and there's not a safe drop off. There's no bus stops within that stretch of Highland right there. And you know, I've been stuck in that lot, and yeah, it can be pretty significant. And that's, you know, the plan with Swoop is to run 2 shuttles, which is also really crucial at that El Porto lot, because sometimes that El Porto lot can take a significant time to get through.
I guess they could get off at Virginia and Grand and walk down the hill and then walk back up, right? Okay. I had another question. Oh, our shuttles, right? They're still alive, right?
They
We
are
still own them?
Yes.
These swoops, we're not going to do any specific like beach shuttle branding or create magnets that can go on the side while they're running.
That is something that, if approved, I can get with Swoop and staff, and we can figure out some sort of branding if needed, or, you know, necessarily. We do have the signs that will be out at the stop, so, you know, that's something we can discuss with Swoop.
And then on what regularity? Like I remember in the past, when we were kids, it was like, oh, one comes every 15 minutes, roughly.
What
are we to expect? 'Cause I was trying to look through the contract to see like if there's anything we are going to hold them to, or if it's, hey, I was sitting at this stop for an hour and nobody came by, and we're paying this company to do this. Like, what's going on?
So no, that wasn't something discussed. I don't know if you want to
Is
answer.
it one
or
shuttle
have
running
anything.
laps, or is
No,
it
we
two?
will have
It
two
is two.
two shuttles running a lap. Yeah.
Hey everyone, how's it going? This has
Your
been
name?
exciting. Peter Evenson.
Thanks, Peter.
Good evening. Yeah, so we looked at the logistics. We're going to have 2 shuttles running, 25 passenger shuttles. So we should be able to get between, I'd say, 20, 25 minutes max with those 2 shuttles running. Depends on traffic. I would say, in morning time periods, it might increase, 5 minutes, but we're going to be in that range of about 20 minutes to make this happen.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Boogie boards, yes.
Yep.
Surfboards, yes.
We're going to
up
look
to...
at the size, right, and try and regulate that as much as possible. We've done that in the past. It's challenging when you have, 10-foot surfboards coming in this vehicle. So.
We don't need any more longboards at the jetty anyway.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. I didn't say that out
I
loud.
just, when we ran the beach shuttle, it was always like, oh, well, if no one's on, then yeah, you
Sure.
can get your longboard on. But
Yeah.
if people are on, no, you got to leave your longboard at the beach. Not ideal. I had to bury it underneath the tower one time. Okay, and then there's no bicycle attachments or anything to these, right?
We
like
weren't
a
planning on
RTD
doing that.
bus.
No. So
Okay.
the program was just to get, up and running as quickly as possible to make it as efficiently as possible.
I just want to make sure that when we start putting it out and we start doing our social media push so the community knows this is running, because we obviously want ridership, that they know, like if a kid shows up with his Razor scooter and his backpack, is he going to be able to hop on with his Razor scooter?
It's gonna be
or hop on with his skateboard? Like, I just want to make sure they know, so, because, that's what we get. We get the emails on, I had my soft cooler and they didn't let me get my cooler on, or my son had a packed lunch with a water bottle and they won't let liquids on their bus, things like that.
Yeah.
So,
What we'll do is we'll draft some comms that you can use to present to the city, and obviously you can edit as you see fit, but we'll have that prepared this week.
awesome.
I got one question on indemnification. I know that looks like we're covered in the language on the contract. Mark, is there any risk of, any real significant risk that someone could sue the city? Swoop did something bad, unintentionally, of course.
If someone gets hurt seriously beyond what they think Swoop has the ability to pay for, they will sue the city.
Okay. Same would hold true for our own services, of course, but okay.
It holds true for anything the city's got its name on.
Have you guys, I know you did some Super Bowl work. I saw that. Have you done any municipal work yet?
We've worked closely with the city of Santa Monica previously, just doing when they were in need of running shuttles. We've done that in the past, more on a short-term basis, wasn't an RFP. quite a bit with obviously the Super Bowl recently. El Segundo companies like BCG Digital Ventures we work with quite often. Amazon's one of our biggest customers. We do all of their shuttling in 47 cities, providing transportation to and from parking lots and shuttling, so on and so forth. So, it's pretty similar in terms of the logistics and whatnot. And I think the Santa Monica use case is probably the most common.
Great. And then the 5 million general liability, is that our standard or?
I was going to mention, this does come with a $5 million liability, insurance and general business coverage. And so we have been increasing this. We don't require $5 million for every type of business in town, but we're doing business with the city. We have been increasing the amounts as we see judgments go up. So $5 million, though, that is good protection for this kind of business. Is it possible somebody could get injured for more? Yes, but this would cover a large percentage of, I can't give you exact percentages. This is good coverage for this kind of activity.
And then one other question, one of the things that our previous buses would do is take the seniors down for their walking at the pier on the boardwalk. Are we going to do an outreach to them about having the seniors use this? And then the other thing, are we going to allow pets on the bus?
Pets we have traditionally not allowed on the shuttles at any time. As for the senior walking program, that is the Striders program is separate from the beach shuttle. So the goal of this was to get the shuttle up and running. Seniors are definitely more than welcome, and we can put that messaging out to them that they can take it down and
just take advantage of it, right?
Yep. So yeah, we can absolutely get that message over to Park Vista and Joslin newsletter and things like that. Right. So absolutely.
Because where's the closest pickup for Park Vista?
Recreation Park.
So they can just walk
Yeah,
to the rec
there's
park and jump
the pickup there, holly and eucalyptus.
I like it. I'll move approval.
Great. We have first, we have second.
Second, Carol, first second.
Any further discussion? No. Okay, Madam Clerk, voice vote, please.
Councilmember Giroux.
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol.
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck.
Aye.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel and Mayor Moyles.
Yes.
5-0 passes.
All right.
Thank
you.
I just want to say, are we
Thank you very much.
doing cost recovery on this? Joe? That's $85,000.
We do get some state dollars for that, right? Yes. Okay, next up. Are we done? Let me make sure I got this correct. I think we're on item 17. Is that right? Does everyone else see it the same way? I've been jumping around quite a bit. Okay. Appointments to the Planning Commission and Recreation and Parks Commission. This is simple. We're announcing the appointments to the Planning Commission. That will be Michelle Keldorf and Jay Heschler. They're both incumbents. They're going to return with full terms expiring June 30th, 2026. They're doing a great job. We thank them both for their service. Also, continuing as an incumbent, she's doing a great job as well. Julie Stolnak will continue on the Recreation and Parks Commission with a full term expiring May 30th, 2026. City Clerk, any reports this evening?
Not this evening, thank you.
Thank you. City Treasurer, I don't see him. Councilmember Giroux.
Nothing from me this evening, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Nichol.
Nothing this evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Perstuck.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank, just recognize, we have a new restaurant, Fogo de Show, did their grand opening, and we had Torrance Memorial grand opening. Good things are happening in El Segundo, and just, recognize all the effort from our community and business leaders who are bringing these businesses to town. Thank you to them for doing that, and just, as we continue to grow and expand, and it's nice and to let everyone know that we do have an urgent care now, a proper urgent care in El Segundo, and it's quite, I think they're going to be adding other components to it, so it's nice to see that in town. Anyway, I also want to wish all the grads from kindergarten or pre-K all the way up to high school graduation. Wish them all luck in their graduation this week, and happy summer to all the kids.
Thank you, Councilmember Perstuck. Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Quickly, Mr. Mayor, a few items. I know there's some questions we had before with people with police events, and in the spirit of today being Election Day, for a lot of things. I think it's important for them to note that a lot of our responses and disclosures on those are governed by state law. And, you know, the appropriate venue to take up those things is oftentimes with their state representatives. We are in a special election for a short term for our assembly person today, and that would be an appropriate place to look at their voting record on labor relations for that. I would also say we have a sanitation meeting tomorrow, a big deal on the county sanitation potential lawsuit settlement over a piece of property disputed out in the desert. It's an enormous amount of money involved. There was a tentative victory to the tune of about $34 million on it, to which we would be a small portion of that, obviously, on the hook. I believe the sanitation district is likely to vote to appeal that. An interesting meeting with some Bay Area council members over small item bonds. They call euphemistically blockchain bonds, and it's something that we may build out a presentation in the future as we look to do things like rec park subsidies and how individual residents can get involved in bonding out small pieces of it. It's a technology play. It's probably not our sweet spot yet, but I know New York is looking at it and Berkeley's looking at it right now as well. There's a big presentation on public entity technology security, hosted by Michael Chertoff, who's a former Department of Homeland Security Secretary. Eric Swalwell was on the board, a lot of Stanford professors, talking about the things that you see when cities try to match public services to the private sector experience and how that technology creates vulnerabilities. Not much to report on that yet, but as we look to a new IT director, that'll be something to take up. And a couple thank yous. I know Parks and Rec has been in the middle of a lot of the tennis and pickleball court, not disputes, but tension on court usage, and I think they've handled that very well. Elias is here, Public Works. Thank you for dealing with all the weird water questions we get. There's leaks everywhere, and why is this person not playing by drought rules? Very deftly done, sir. Thank you for managing that. And lastly, we've got some police patrol things in the works that we may have for some ideas about how to increase the sense of safety and security in the residential area. So in our 221 meetings coming up, look for that from the city manager. That's all.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. There is, in addition to the other ribbon cuttings, Sylvan Learning Center just opened. That was over the weekend. They're in El Segundo Plaza on the east side. The Works, is that what that's called now? The Works, yeah. And it was a great grand opening, excited for them. Blue butterflies, they do exist. I did an impromptu tour today with a couple members of the community who are very passionate about it. We went over to Dockweiler Youth Center, saw their habitat, and I have video proof that blue butterflies exist. They're tiny little buggers. And the males are blue and the females are not. Did you know that? Okay, you knew that. I didn't know that. I also met with Jen Gray of Topgolf. It was National Women's Day, and Topgolf in El Segundo was celebrating. Callaway was there, some of their chief executives and a bunch of lady pros. It was great to see. And that's all I have this evening. City Attorney.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Okay, City Manager, any follow-up items?
I also don't have anything else this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
We are adjourned at 8:53. Thank you.